Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Next Gen Male Medical. Joined now by Tim Verghese from inside Nebraska. Tim, how are we doing this morning?
Doing, guys.
We don't get to see your face today, Tim. What's going on, bud?
I know, sorry. I'm just running some errands this morning, so just a little busy, and don't think I'm at my most presentable.
Oh man,
Fair enough.
The free flowing locks ain't hyping. Listen, Ravi just finished one of his famous meltdowns, so we're just trying to. We went, and this isn't the first time. It's probably like the fifth or sixth, maybe more. A full 60 minutes.
Oh no, that happens like once a week.
TV, where I'm like, well, it seemed fast because I didn't have to say much. Maybe you can explain it, Ravi.
No, you know, Tim, you were talking about. I think Alan True, if I remember the name correctly, originally posted the Ohio State interest in Trey Taylor, and then you kind of quote tweeted it and gave some context here about, you know, you don't think it's a real threat and kind of things like that, which we'll kind of get to that. But I made the connection between certain media members being negative about Trey's reaction to Ahmad Hudson, and I swear to God, if he ends up going somewhere else because of this, I'm going to lose my mind. And then I did that for about 60 minutes. So that's generally what happened.
Not Mike Wallace's 60 minutes either. It was much more. Wow. Yeah.
So Tim, my question there is, I do want to get to the
I didn't get, you know, and the only thing I'd say to that, TV, is I don't think the fam actually loved it, but I think everybody does know what comes with the territory and playing.
Yeah, at any high profile program.
And a high profile program playing, but that wasn't anything about like X's and O's or anything.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it's important to put out there, like this isn't the result of backlash within the fan base or missing out on Ahmad or anything like that. This is, you know, I talked about it a little bit this week. Look, I mean, you have to look at this from the national scale. You have to zoom out a little bit, and you have to think back on the conversation when Nebraska picked up Trey Taylor's commitment last year. And again, this wasn't necessarily out there in public, but you asked around at some schools, other schools Taylor was in on, asked around at some schools within the region of like, okay, well, why didn't you guys push for Trey as hard? And there were some schools out there that wanted to wait and see. This whole cycle, Nebraska has somewhat avoided this QB carousel that you've seen and the dominoes that you've seen fall elsewhere. And how crazy the QB cycle has been here in 27 because they picked up such an early commitment from Trey. They took that early swing. They bet on Trey's talent. They both kind of bet on each other a little bit. And now we're sitting here a year later, and Nebraska holds the commitment from one of the surefire top 5 quarterback prospects here in the 2027 cycle. And the other part of this conversation is Ohio State took a similar swing themselves. And I can't speak for them, but they're operating now like a pretty unhappy customer. Trey is not the only quarterback they're after. If you go and look at the piece that Steve Wilfong put up, if you go and look at the piece Steve Wilfong put up yesterday, they're in contact and have watched about 8 to 10 quarterbacks here in the 27 cycle, many of whom have already committed elsewhere. Work out as of late. They are just actively in the quarterback market. Trey just happens to be perhaps the guy at the very top of that board for them now as they go about this search. Now, like I said yesterday, I don't think there's too much to be concerned about at this point. Trey has said all the right things about this program. He remains, again, the most active peer recruiter we've really ever seen in the modern era when it comes to a recruit pursuing others to join him at a program. We haven't seen anything like this, at least in Nebraska, in a while. And so you have that going on. You have he's moving in the very near future down to Millard South for his senior season. Now, that said, Nebraska has to win some games in the fall to prevent any more noise from, because Ohio State's not the only program in pursuit here. There are a number of Power 4 programs who, again, are waiting to see how some of the remaining QB dominoes fall here this summer. And then, it wouldn't surprise me if there are a couple teams in the SEC that circle back on Trey Taylor in the fall. Wouldn't surprise me if some of the who's who of college football on the West Coast, in maybe the ACC, circle back, just depending on how their own quarterback search goes. Because, like I said, Trey has established himself as one of the top 5 quarterback prospects here in the country. And I had this conversation with a few people this week. We're a couple weeks away from the Elite 11 finals. If you were to put out odds for who's going to win the Elite 11 finals, Trey would probably have the best odds. So we're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This is to be expected. This is what this looks like when you hold a commitment of a top ranked. Nebraska benefited from this on the other end of this with Dylan Raiola. That was a recruitment where, again, there was never a quiet, real moment in that recruitment. There were always schools in contact. And now we're on the other end of this where Nebraska holds the longtime commitment of one of the top quarterbacks here in the 27 cycle. And they're going to have to withstand. They're going to have to withstand pursuit from other programs. They have done a lot right. They're going to have to win some games. They're going to have to land some key recruits and really show Taylor and I think really prove to him. I mean, Taylor will play a part in this as a peer recruiter, but really show him that they're capable of surrounding him with the talent needed to elevate this program.
Yeah, and it didn't really help that it's on the heels of the rumblings or whatever with what's going on with Torrey Pittman. We kind of broached it a little bit last week, and I think I saw on, it was either on your site or maybe it was your X account, kind of more of the same. And I don't want to speak for you in your stance where you think it's to be expected, or do you think somebody's cool? Like, what do you think is going on with Pittman? More of the same when you get a prospect like this?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, like, look, he visited Miami. That's a program you can't really ignore if they're after you. And I'll also say this because I've seen that out there as well. Of, hey, if these guys were really committed, they wouldn't be engaging with these schools. It's not how the recruiting process really works. Like Torrey Pittman can't say, "Hey, Miami, don't stop by my high school." Just don't. There's like, they're going to stop by. They want to stop by. Like, they're going to stop by. So Miami's going to stop by. LSU's going to stop by. Like, yeah, you can do it. I remember being around. It was a couple cycles ago. DJ Hicks, 5-star defensive lineman, now at Texas A&M. And he announced his top 5, and I met with him and his family like a week later. And I was sitting down with his dad, who I'd gotten to know pretty well through the process. He's a head coach down there in the Houston area. And he was like, "Man, we announced his top 5. I thought things would slow down. I thought these schools would stop, but it's every day. It's schools that, haven't engaged with us in weeks or haven't really, given us any reason to be excited about them, that are still trying to get them on campus, still in contact." This is how the recruiting process works if you're a blue chip prospect. This is just kind of what it is. And like we mentioned way back when Torrey even committed, there was always going to be this chance that he wants to explore national options. He didn't get the chance to do so before he committed. In fact, I remember the timing of his initial commitment was a bit surprising because he wanted to utilize the fall of his junior season to go see some of these national programs that had been in pursuit that he had not had a chance to see. It's coming a little bit later, but he is finally doing, at least listening and doing his due diligence in evaluating some of those national options. Now, on the other end of this, like we've kind of talked about, he's someone that still kind of needs to prove it. And on Nebraska's end, they're actively moving, to put together a really, really good DB class with or without his commitment. They'd love to keep him in the class. They'd love to secure the highest ranked in-state commit, or in-state prospect to come through the state in a while, and keep him in the class. But if they don't, they have plenty of options at safety, at nickel, at corner, where they're going to be in a good spot to put together a good DB class regardless of what happens here.
Tim, speaking of Miami being around Miller North and going to his school, there was a 2029 offer that went out to Achille Heath Moody. Was that a surprise? His first Power 4 offer, if I'm not mistaken. Was that surprising to you at all? I know you keep pretty good tabs on not just guys Nebraska's after, but a lot of the guys locally that have national interest.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise. He's one I'm really excited to see in the fall, see what this looks like, in as he's progressed. But it doesn't surprise me just in the sense that this is kind of how Miami operates with underclass talent. They extend those offers pretty early. They like to get in the mix pretty early because they know, nothing's really committable with them until you visit. It's like Georgia. Georgia does the same thing.
They can always say no.
Yeah, that's the thing. Both Miami and Georgia, that's how you could operate when you're a program like that. Is you can, I mean, you've seen it with Georgia now. They've had a flurry of new offers here in the 27 cycle. They do a good job of getting out ahead on 29 and younger talent, and some of that is just to get themselves in the mix. But yeah, none of that's committable until you visit.
Make this the summer event at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. Lease the 2026 Jeep Wrangler Sport S starting at $289 a month. Built for the road and ready for summer. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn starting at $399 a month, or finance at 2.9% APR for 72 months. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Chevrolet. Lease the 2026 Chevy Trax LT for just $349 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. 2 great Chevys, one big June event. Slide into a 2026 Chevy Equinox LT for just $399 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. Get to Edwards Chevrolet today. Together, let's drive.
I think we had a little bit of an idea that I didn't know if we knew it was going to be as fast of closing time, but I mean, we talked to Coach Wade and he was getting ready to walk into the high school in Logansville, just continuing to crush it at Grayson. I mean, clearly the efforts are intentional.
Yeah. I mean, the way this one heated up. I mean, they offered Jones last month and really started putting I think the heat on both of those guys and I think it really came together once the Jones offer went out with both of those guys. And I mean, they were already in that top 3 for Ag Bonoma. I think we talked about it plenty on this show before. We're in that top 3. You know, and it felt like for a long time Texas A&M was the school they were catching, but down the stretch it was Georgia that ended up being the biggest threat. That Georgia got them on campus for the last unofficial visit just this past weekend. They had intentionally timed that one out too. They had hoped that getting the last unofficial and you know, kind of scheduling the OV the way they had would put them in position to kind of surge. And No, I mean, one thing I'm pretty impressed by. We've talked about this before here too. Nebraska doesn't usually push the issue with recruits. In terms of, they let guys make their decision on their own time, and they're not going to really pressure anyone to make a decision. And I don't think there was any of that here necessarily. But I do think this was a recruitment where they finally kind of just were like, okay, hey, you know what? We're going in. We're getting this. We're getting our guy. Like we want Jordan Agbonomo. We want KD Jones. We want these guys as we see these guys potential impact starters along the interior of the line. Let's go get them. And they kind of left no doubt in both of these recruitments. And it's impressive work. This thing really got hot over the last week or so. I put in that prediction for Jones last week. Put in the prediction for Agbonomo early this week, and yeah, it just came together very fast.
And you may go 3 for 3, especially when you see tight ends list their final 5. And lo and behold, Nebraska's in there as well. They may hit the trifecta.
Yeah, spoiling a little bit. I'm fixing to put in a prediction here later this morning and write up a little story. But yeah, they're trending well there, and that's one. It's Joey Hunter, tight end from Loganville, Grayson, 6'6", 255 pounds. Has not visited yet, which he'll need to change that. So Nebraska needs to get him on campus first, but do think that's going to happen. He's working to shuffle his official visit schedule around to fit Nebraska in. I think another shuffle is potentially on the way. It sounds like both Agbonomo and Jones are considering moving theirs to the 19th through the 21st to join the rest of the commits at the end of the month. And if that happens, I think Nebraska would ideally like Hunter to shift his around to be in Nebraska the last weekend of June as well. So that's going to work itself out first, I think, because I do know Georgia Tech is pushing. A few other programs are really pushing for Hunter. But yeah, I mean, now that 2 of his teammates are committed and the push Nebraska's made, I mean, they stopped by his school. Marcus Satterfield just stopped by for an in-home visit. I think he likes a lot of what he's hearing from Nebraska. Trey Taylor's been in contact as well. And we know how important that is for tight ends. And again, I mean, at this point, I mean, Taylor's the best quarterback in this recruitment. So I like Nebraska there. We'll just have to see if they're able to get him to campus.
Tim, speaking of kind of guys that are planning to be here in that time range between the 19th and the 21st, we've talked a lot about wide receivers and Nebraska kind of making a push for another one. What are you hearing good things in Nebraska's direction on Matthew Gregory?
Yeah, continuing to hear good things. We'll have to. I want to see how they navigate June because I think all 3 of its official visits besides Nebraska are to places who or are to programs that can surge, with just one visit. Virginia Tech has some familiarity with him. James Franklin, that staff know him well from their time at Penn State. I'm not counting them out. UCLA just offered. They're going to get him on campus for the first time. And UCLA, I mean, the way they've kind of stuck out on the recruiting trail is they offer market value to above market value for guys, for blue chip prospects that, are kind of working through some negotiations elsewhere, and UCLA ends up being the highest bidder. So I can't count them out just yet. I know they're willing to get aggressive. Won't be able to count them out just yet. And LSU is the other one where he's going to officially visit LSU. As of now, I don't really see him ending up at LSU. But if that visit goes well and the Tigers decide to press, I mean, they can kind of set the market for him if they so choose. But all of that said, going into official visit season, I think comfort's something that matters to him. Long-term established relationships are something that matter to him. And Nikhil Shorts has been in pretty consistent contact since getting him to campus back in September. And he's a priority target for Trey Taylor and in the offensive staff in general. I will have to see how they navigate official visit season. But if he makes it to that last OV, my feeling on all of this, most of those guys who are uncommitted as of now that are expected in on June 19th through the 21st, just think it's going to be hard for those guys to leave that last visit weekend uncommitted. You're on campus with Trey Taylor and Tay Ellis and Amir Brown and Matt Erickson and Torrey Pittman and the guys who are really excited about being part of this 27 class. It's going to be the same weekend as the Battle of the Boneyard tournament. It's going to be the same weekend as a bunch of visits. And so there's going to be a lot of excitement on campus. Taylor is going to be pushing hard. A lot of those commits are going to be pushing hard for these guys to join them. I just think the energy around the program that last weekend, it's going to be, Taylor's going to be in town for all of these OV weekends, but that last weekend in particular, I just think the energy that's expected and the push from the commits, it's going to be tough for anyone to leave that weekend uncommitted.
Hey, speaking of Grayson, how about let's go first name and talk Laguna Beach with Kaz. Coach Manning got very familiar with that area. Laguna Beach hadn't been on the map for a sec, but long, lean, explosive edge, just a pup. But you can kind of see with that wingspan what they're after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to like in the frame and in some of the flashes we've seen early on. I mean, still very much figuring it out, but I mean, he's someone who, I mean, Greg Biggins, our guy on the West Coast, he calls him one of his bigger sleepers at the pass rusher position out in the West Coast. So Nebraska is really getting involved there. I think they're going to have a real shot. They're
19th to 20th one. He's. I mean, to get him that weekend is huge.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and he's one who, I mean, I'm curious to see if there are any more offers that roll in here before June gets going, because Nebraska is really this first major Power 4 that's pushing for him. So I am curious if anyone else hops in the mix. But yeah, this is a recruitment they can win. This is also a recruitment where, I mean, these are the type of edge rushers you want to be taking swings at. I mean, you have to go where no one else is going, and it helps to have helps to have relationships out west for guys like this.
The Kia Summer Sticker Sales event is on at Edwards Kia. Lease the 2026 Kia Sportage Hybrid S all-wheel drive starting at $299 a month. Edwards Kia is on a winning streak. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2027 Kia Telluride S all-wheel drive starting at $469 a month. Don't wait. Slide into savings with the Edwards Kia Summer Sticker Sales event. Slide into savings at Edwards Hyundai. Finance the 2026 Hyundai Santa Fe at 0% for 72 months. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Hyundai Kona SE all-wheel drive. Sign and drive starting at $287 a month with 0 down. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Hyundai. It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Nissan. Lease the 2026 Nissan Rogue Platinum starting at $379 a month, a platinum lease worth driving home. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Nissan Pathfinder SV starting at $399 a month while supplies last. Don't miss your pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Nissan.
Tim, I want to ask you a sort of philosophical question about local recruiting here, right? You see the Parrish offer came out last week. Obviously, Mo Purify commits the week before. And it's clear, I think, that Nebraska is keeping a very close eye on what's happening in state. If you look at their roster, I think that reflects that. But there is kind of this glaring omission of a lot of the players from last class, particularly the ones that went to Millard South. There just wasn't a lot of communication or interest there from one way to the other. Do you have an idea of like what they're looking for specifically from local recruits that kind of led that to be the case? Or was it just not good relationships with the coaching staff, so it was kind of difficult to get in with those guys? Like, because it does sort of seem like an outlier in terms of the way they've evaluated the state.
Yeah, so I think they prioritize athleticism, of course, and I think the two things to keep in mind when they're recruiting in state: one, they need you to be able to camp. They need you to get on campus first. I mean, you need a camp to earn the offer. That's pretty standard across the board for most guys. And two, I would say, I mean, I think there's a lot of those athletic markers. I thought there was some of that last year. I mean, when we talk Millard South in particular, I think the one name when we look back on the Millard South roster and really what happened there is Amarion, and that was one where right or wrong, again we'll find out in the next few years as he develops at Penn State and as Nebraska kind of works through their own wide receiver and DB situation, but. The thing with that one was athleticism was always like, Nebraska has certain athletic markers they look for at the wide receiver and DB position, and he didn't check those off on the track, and so they weren't able to offer. Doesn't mean he's not a good football player, doesn't mean they didn't like him, but there's just certain things they're looking for when you're in a certain height and weight threshold for them that you need to be able to hit athletic wise. He wasn't able to hit. Again, doesn't mean he's not a good football player. I thought I really enjoyed watching him. I thought, again, he has some natural football player instincts, and you're seeing that with the comments they're making about him at Penn State, the way he's climbed the depth chart in his first spring on campus. Good football player. He was one I felt was a little overthought at times, but at the same time, again, you have to trust your evaluation. You can't go against your evaluation. You can't go against the thresholds that you set out for yourself. Otherwise, what's the point of setting those?
The other one that I'm always been curious about, and I think the way the situation played out at Nebraska is interesting. Do you think outside of a Dylan, Dayton, Raiola situation that there may have been a different conversation with Jet Tamala?
Yes, yeah. I mean, look, but that's a conversation where we're it's a different world kind of conversation where if those two, Nebraska didn't even have those guys on campus, or Nebraska wasn't even really pushing, whatever that looks like. Yeah, and I think in retrospect, yeah, there's probably a world where Nebraska absolutely pushes, but with all of that, and I mean, honestly, look, we have to think about this too. They had Trey Taylor really committed before Jet really started to settle down and make a decision. And yeah, I mean, Nebraska never pushed pre-decision, but you look at from a floor standpoint, Trey's a guy who can come in again. Now, granted, a year later, but Trey's a guy who can come in and compete for a starting job in year one. Jet, I thought, may have been capable of it, but needed some additional development. I think it's better for Jet's development that he gets a year or two to sit down and develop. And so, for that reason, I mean, it from a math standpoint, when you look at the timelines moving forward, I don't know how much sense it would have made for Nebraska. But yes, in retrospect, if they didn't have Dayton committed, if Dylan wasn't around, or if they knew Dylan was leaving, I think there probably would have been a different approach to that recruitment. But yeah, that's a world where, again, a lot of the certainties we had at the time didn't exist.
You know, I think we're overthinking it. I do. I think kind of from the not always just the outside looking in. And I don't mean the Jet Tamala thing is Jet Tamala. Fantastic player. One of the best high school players I've ever coached against. And when I look at this ascent from his sophomore to his junior year, you know, his dad is ridiculously honest. I thought Jet was ridiculously honest about needing time, right? Sophomore year to junior year. Even his quarterbacks coach at the time, now his head coach, we talked about this, the work that he put in over a year and a half span. The junior year rolls around. Excuse me. It's looking like he's going to be pretty good, right? You can see it. The part that bugs me is both sides understand how it unfolded. Nebraska, even if they really wanted to come back and be intentional about the recruiting, the family reserves the right to be like, hey, it's just too little too late. Like, we both agreed to move on. You have your 2027. The thing that aggravates me is we make it more than it is, where we just think Nebraska intentionally didn't want a guy or something like that. Because I hear this about Braylon Warren too. And I'm like, it has to be a two-way street.
Sure.
Yeah.
And number one, Nebraska has to show interest. If they don't, it's not up to whomever's being recruited to be like, oh, we're going to wait around for you. But conversely, if Nebraska wants you there, then you've got to show interest too. I don't overthink it, right? I'm going to cheer my brains out for Jed. I'm going to cheer my brains out for Braylon. Do I want all guys that I think are good that can help Nebraska win to go to Nebraska? Yeah, but we don't understand enough about what transpired behind the scenes to have these sweeping opinions on misses and hits when it comes to recruiting. That's the most about Jet, is because I think the conversation is extremely disingenuous. We just say, well, Nebraska didn't recruit. It's like, no, man. I mean, when Jet puts himself in position to be really good, he can call the shots to say he now is in the position of power, right? Like, hey, man.
Yeah, and that's kind of like when he, I mean, when Dayton decommitted, and even last summer when it really started to, or I would say early last fall, when it really felt like Jet, you know, was really starting to, I mean, his senior year was explosive, you know, it was good, and I think there were a lot of questions about it, and it was like, hey, is Nebraska going to circle back here? It was like, look, both sides are pretty happy with where they're. I mean, you know, in Nebraska, I think pretty much understood that too. Like, he picked a good spot for himself. He was happy with that decision, and we have to keep in mind, like, I put this out when Nebraska, when they lost Dayton, and there was a thought of, oh, maybe they go back in on Jet. Jet really agonized over the decision to flip from Iowa State to Alabama. Like, I didn't think another flip was in him. You know, it took so much out. Like, it took so much for him to flip away from Iowa State in the first place. I didn't think another flip, especially that late in the process with a program that, yeah, he knew pretty well by proximity, but hadn't really gotten to know at the level that he did Iowa State or Alabama. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I think he's in a good spot for himself. I think that QB room and that offense is the best place for him to develop.
I think we'd all love to be in a position where, because this is how I look at, this is one of the reasons why I like Jet so much. He was very self-aware on his progress. He called himself a late bloomer. We look at the finished product and we say, oh man, I can't believe. I think one of the things that I appreciate about him the most is he put himself in a position through his work and his training to call the shots. Like, that's what we all want. We want to develop our skills in such a way where we can say, well, you were with me from day one, or you weren't with me from day one, or this is the best opportunity for me. Yeah, thanks, but no. Like, that's kind of what we all covet. Again, the part that, like, that's the part we're missing. We make it seem what other schools didn't do. you got to focus on what Jet and that family did do. He went to work. Like, he heard you just play with good players, or, like, he heard all the criticisms, right? The working under pressure, the release, the accuracy. And you know what? He's like, oh, okay, I got you. I'll see you guys in a year in the lab when I'm torching this thing. And then how about now, right? The ISU thing is beautiful, right? Because even when let's keep it a buck, even when he said, hey, I'm decommitting and going to Alabama, let's not sit here and say, people are like, oh, he's not going to play. He's not going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Then they watch his senior season and they're like, damn, that guy's pretty flipping. Like, we're so disingenuous about the discussion. Any school was going to be late to the party with how good Jet turned out to be. Like, it's a funny conversation in revisionist history.
And I still see some people out there like, oh, well who cares? Like, he's going to be sitting on the bench. It's like, well, Keelan Russell is a special quarterback talent, and
I'm just listen.
You're better for sitting behind a Keelan Russell, and even then, I think he's going to push Keelan down like over these next few years. I think he's going to push Keelan over these next few years.
Clearly does not need a babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When he went to Millard South, he wasn't supposed to be the guy. He made it that way.
Mm-hmm. You know what I like the most about Jet? And this is a weird. I was at 7-on-7, and his old head coach. It's 7-on-7. He's tearing people up. This is before his junior year.
I know what you're going to say because you came over to me. And
yeah,
you
I
said,
came and talked to you about.
Always like this.
So I was talking about the coach, not Jet, but yes. So Jet's tearing people up. This is between his sophomore and junior year. I thought he was pretty good. I was like, hey, he's got good size. Like, he had a good sophomore year. I think this guy might be something, and he hadn't gotten a lot of buzz yet. Not that I thought he was going to end up being an Alabama guy, but like I thought he was pretty good. And it's 7-on-7, so he's dicing people up pretty good. And his head coach comes over to him, his old head coach, and is just screaming in his face, like full Bo Pelini, Taylor Martinez, Texas A&M, screaming in his face. And Jet just does not flinch. Just dialed in, listens to his coach. Yes, coach. No, coach. Yes, coach. Like, very respectful, like, but also very, like, not timid, right? Like, when you're, he couldn't have been more than 16 at that point, getting yelled at by a grown man in his face, like, this far away, and just absolutely, like, confident of himself, but still incredibly respectful. And, like, even though, like, I was watching him, I was like, what could he possibly be that mad at? He's just dicing people right now. But I was like, that's a temperament that that will give you a shot.
Yeah. And even from junior year to senior year,
he was 20% better.
Yeah.
Like, nobody was seeing that except those people on 144th and Q.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was so good. It was almost laughable.
Yeah.
It was almost laughable. Like,
there was literally nothing you could do.
I just chuckled. I'm like, this guy worked his ass off.
Yeah.
Like, he's way good. But what we do now is I can't believe we make it about the Dayton. It wasn't even that. It was by the time Dayton rolled around and Nebraska was going there, like, I think Jet and and rightfully had probably moved on.
Yeah.
And Nebraska couldn't go back and get it.
Yeah. No.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, man, like, you take that and you move on and you try to continue to get quarterbacks. I just think that's the reality of it. I think if everybody's honest, he's way better than anybody originally thought, and you just have to take the L.
You just have to eat it.
You just got to eat it.
And I'll say this too.
This dude, he's sensational.
Yeah, and I'll say this too real quick too. Part of this conversation, I think, when we go from we're not talking about an individual player too. Look, I mean, Nebraska's going to get their guys regardless too, but there's also a point where, on both sides of it, like, Nebraska's loading up on the offensive line right now, and we're at a point now where Barrett Cottrell is not necessarily a must-have. At the same time, Nebraska would hate to lose him to an out-of-state program. And he's getting to a point from a recruiting standpoint where he's going to be able to call his own shots too. He's got Tennessee in the mix. He's got Iowa. He's got Minnesota. he can tell Nebraska no and do his own thing if he wants to. And Nebraska has their guys; they can shoot, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, look, Nebraska could miss out on him and still put together a pretty good offensive line class. You know, I don't think losing out on Cottrell takes away from what they've put together, what Jeep Wade's done. At the same time, it would sting to lose an in-state talent. I know there's going to be some hand-wringing about it, but ultimately everyone's going to do what's best for them. Look, he's had plenty of he's been considering Nebraska for a long time. He's an in-state legacy. He'd love to play at Nebraska, all of that, but he's got legitimate options to consider out of state, and he's going to consider them. This is how you want guys to approach the recruiting process, is to take the fan hat off. You want them to take the legacy hat off. You want them to look at every option and see what makes the most sense for them. And yeah, there's a world where Nebraska puts together a pretty good offensive line class that doesn't include one of the top in-state offensive linemen.
Yeah, I'll go right over to 89th and Pacific. You think Braylon Warren doesn't feel some type of way?
Yeah.
And he's going to Missouri, who he's got a chance to, has all the tools in the world. I mean, an effortless spinner of the football. He's worked his ass off in the offseason. Like, we'll be hearing about this in like 2 years. And I'm just telling you, it wasn't in the cards. Like you can't go back and get it, man. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
Recruiting is tough.
Well, TB, thank you for indulging me on my my philosophical in-state question. I just wanted to get some of that out there, because I did think it was really interesting, especially with the offers that came out late. So
I know one thing, TV, no pressure. When Micah Camp's in Lincoln and he lays down this ridiculous time, Iowa State or Iowa better not go before Nebraska. I'm fully prepared to melt down.
Yeah, you think I'm petty? Well, go hang out with Micah for a minute.
Make this the summer event at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. Lease the 2026 Jeep Wrangler Sport S starting at $289 a month. Built for the road and ready for summer. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn starting at $399 a month, or finance at 2.9% APR for 72 months. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point.
It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Chevrolet. Lease the 2026 Chevy Trax LT for just $349 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. 2 great Chevys, one big June event. Slide into a 2026 Chevy Equinox LT for just $399 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. Get to Edwards Chevrolet today. Together, let's drive.
Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get your tickets. Their next match, Wednesday, July 1st. It's presented by Nebraska Medicine. It's their Stars, Stripes, and Soccer game against AV Alta FC. Union Omaha is where it's at. 7 p.m. Morrison Stadium for the Stars, Stripes, and Soccer match on Wednesday, July 1st. Get to unionomaha.com for your tickets. Well, Tim, speaking of recruiting, obviously Nebraska was on a pretty good run there with offensive linemen over the last week or so, and looks like starting next week, I believe, they have a ton of visits coming in. Out of the linemen, we'll start there, that committed, the 3 linemen in the past week. Is there one of them that you're just particularly high on where you're just like, hey, I just really like this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Jordan Agbanoma fan. I mean, I back in the fall, I remember just kind of watching that tape and just falling in love with the player. And I think I like all 3 additions. I think there's something to like with all 3. I think Leo, you like the versatility, you like the athleticism, you like. I think relative to his experience, I think he's a little further along technically than you'd expect, which is encouraging. I think with KD's very athletic, versatile. I think the big thing with KD is going to be just making sure his consistency and is better at the next level. He's more in control of his athleticism at the next level. But Jordan's as clean cut, I think, as an interior lineman as you will find in the cycle. It's really him and Albert Simeon when you talk about true, like, hey, you turn on the tape and it's just dominance for 10 to 15. You know what I mean? Like it's just dominant tape. He's a I would say he's a dominant striker. Both of those guys are, but with Ag, it's something where guys go backwards. He gets hands on you, you go backwards. He's pretty versatile in the sense that he can work outside, he can work inside, he can pull, he can climb. He can lead block. He can down block. He can do everything you want a lineman to do. And then you look at the frame and like, oh, well, you don't need a whole lot of time to add any weight to him. So he's a high floor prospect with a pretty high ceiling as well, who, again, I know people will scoff at it and people will question it if it happens, but he's got a good shot at being a true freshman starter. I really think that just with what his skill set is and the shape I expect him to enroll at Nebraska in, he's going to be a guy more so than these other 2. I think that has a real shot at winning a starting job in year 1.
Let me ask you about, and I'm not going to listen. Wide receiver recruiting it's probably one of the least of my concerns. And I get the latest news with Caden Howard and kind of the OVs we talk about the defensive backs being in a good spot just to buy themselves some wiggle room if some key targets come off the board. Do you feel the same when it comes to wide receiver recruiting?
Ooh. Receiver recruiting is one of those things that's turned into, I would say I view receiver recruiting the way I would say the average NFL fans views running back value. There are so many wide receivers now, and there are so many that you can get that are relatively high floor that you can plug in and work in. And I would say, I mean, look, I would say this to add to that point. I think if you're a Power 5 program, you have no excuse to not have a capable wide receiver rotation. There's enough talent, there's enough body types, there's enough versatility, there's enough out there where you should be able to put together what you want. You should be able to Yeah, like you should be able to put together the guys you want. You should be able to find guys that you can develop. There's just so much talent. I mean, we're talking about like I would say like just talk about a guy like Milan Green, who's on Nebraska's board here in the cycle. You know, may not even OV based on the they have they have 2 commits. They have 3 targets expected to visit that are ranked higher that they feel strongly about. But if they let's say they lose Caden Howard and they strike out with 2 of the remaining 3 targets and they have a spot out there, you have a guy in Milan Green who put up 700 yards as a sophomore, playing top private school competition in St. Louis, and sat out his junior season because of transferring. And so his recruitment's gotten is a little bit under the radar, but you turn on the tape, you look at the play, and you're like, oh, this is a productive slot receiver. Nebraska just needs a slot and just needs to add someone. That's a guy they can absolutely just kind of lay up and add potentially. So I would say that's my general thought on receiver recruiting. Now that said, there's a big, like with running backs, there's a select few, I think, at the very top of every cycle that are different, that you do need to invest in. And if you want to go get like in this cycle for Nebraska, I would say the 2 of them at the very top of this are Matthew Gregory and Khalil Taylor. I would say Taylor more than Gregory, and because of, I think you look at his frame, he's thicker. He's someone who can go up and get it. He's a ball winner. You can also take the top off of defenses, and he's a pretty well-rounded route runner. I think Gregory's a little slider in that sense. Does a good job playing outside his frame, but he can win with underneath, win in the short area. But right now, I think some of his best stuff he does is at the catch point, downfield, and for a 6'1.5", 175 pounder. Want to see a little bit more with him underneath, but you like the overall skill set. Again, not to say Nebraska would love to have at least one of the 2, and Isaiah Alvarez on top of that, another pretty solid receiver. So they have a chance at stacking some talent here this cycle. But at the end of the day, too, I get the thing with the receiver conversation. I think in this day and age, is if you don't get it in high school, you can absolutely go get it in the portal. Like there are plenty of options for you. And that's why I say there's no excuse. There's plenty of options for you to retool your room, to add to the room. If you feel your room is missing something, you can go get something. Like there are plenty of options out there if you were looking for receivers, if you're looking for playmakers in space. There's plenty of options to add those. I don't necessarily know if, and that's why I'm going to be curious to see, like for a program like Nebraska, for some of these other programs, how the allocation of money changes at a position like that, because there's just so much now. And you could choose to just, like for Nebraska, for example, this year, right now they're working to add all of these high school receivers. But let's say Isaiah, let's say Ja'Cory, let's say Quasi all have good years, and all of a sudden all 3 are looking to declare. You'd have to think the math would change for Nebraska a little bit, and they'd have to say, oh, well, maybe we need to allocate, some of this money to go get a portal receiver now, because we're not necessarily sure about, the experience in the room behind the top 3. That's something that, they'll have to figure out in real time. If that's again a hypothetical for down the line, but it's something they have to figure out in real time.
Let me ask you something, Tim. As we kind of look at the momentum from offensive line recruiting at the high school level, and I think currently on Nebraska's roster, they have probably 12 or 13 true interior linemen, only 1 senior in Stoutmeyer. You got 11 edges, only 2 seniors there with Anthony Jones and Cam Linhart. What does Nebraska need to do in the next cycle and a half along the defensive line at the high school level?
Ooh. So I would say in 27 right now, I think they're tracking for, I would say 2 to 3 additions along the D line this cycle. Would like to see that bump up. I mean, again, I think if you factor in edge, I would say 3 to 4 in total. Front defenders is I think what they're tracking for this cycle. I think 28. I would like to see. Again, we're going to see it in the next few weeks. Communication with 28s really starts to pick up on June 15th. But once that gets going, I'd really like to see Nebraska get ahead with some of these top 28 edges and D linemen. I'd like to see them take some swings. I'd like to see them build out a pretty deep board. I think they're going to have the opportunity in 2028, because it's going to be the first full cycle for Roy Manning and Corey Brown. they're going to have a a shot at bringing in their guys, bringing in a full class of their guys if they so choose.
Mhm.
I'd like to see him attack it. I'd like to see him attack it. I think we're starting to see body types. We've had the conversation on the show of like what Corey Brown's looking for. I think we're also starting to figure out a little bit of the body types that Manning's looking for. I'd say there's a difference. Manning, I think, is a little more open. I don't think he's, I think Manning has a little more, like he's all over. There's a 6'1" edge rusher on his board, and there's also like a 6'5", 6'6" edge rusher
You
on
look
his
at
board.
like Cucamonga, and it's like a
Yeah.
long drink of water with Grayson. But
Yeah, it's all over. Yeah, it's all over. You got Kaz Moose, you've got all these different types of you got guys that can bend, you got guys that are more stiff, and are more true power rushers. So I think he's a little more open. Brown, on the other hand, I think you're starting to see really body types emerge for him. And so I want to see them attack 28. I would say with these next few months really hard. Would like to see them pick up some wins in 27. I know, Kaz Moose and Mato Mo wouldn't necessarily be huge splash wins, but I think both of those guys to get things started for this edge group for Manning in this cycle. If you're able to land at least one of the two, if not both, feel pretty good about at least the floor of edge recruiting moving forward. But I'd like to see them take some splashes. I'd like to see them, dial in a little bit. I would say, you can't in the same way that I think Jeep Wade is now stacking depth on the offensive line. I'd like to see them start to stack depth on the defensive line. There's plenty of opportunity for it. The one thing I would say I don't want this program to be in a position is where I don't want this program to be in a position where they're in the portal again this offseason with a desperate need to add D linemen. I don't think whether it's enough young guys on the roster playing well enough that you feel good about the guys returning, or you land enough in recruiting, high school recruiting this cycle. Ideally, I think the goal for Nebraska should be this portal season. You go get D lineman if you need to, or you go pursue it, but it's not like a make or break type. We need to address this need like it has been the last 2 cycles or so.
Make this the summer event at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. Lease the 2026 Jeep Wrangler Sport S starting at $289 a month. Built for the road and ready for summer. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn starting at $399 a month, or finance at 2.9% APR for 72 months. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point.
It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Chevrolet. Lease the 2026 Chevy Trax LT for just $349 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. 2 great Chevys, one big June event. Slide into a 2026 Chevy Equinox LT for just $399 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. Get to Edwards Chevrolet today. Together, let's drive.
Tim, moving from camps to visits, how big of a deal is it that Matthew Gregory moved up his visit 2 weeks to this weekend?
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, you have some wide receiver dominoes that need to get figured out here in these next few weeks, and so yeah, you have. I would say here's how you shape up the wide receiver conversation very simply. This week you have Matthew Gregory visiting Nebraska. You also have 3-star wide receiver Caden Howard visiting Georgia, making an official visit to Georgia Tech. Whatever news comes out of this visit will greatly impact what happens next weekend when Khalil Taylor, the 4-star wide receiver and top 100 prospect, and Isaiah Alvarez, 3-star wide receiver at a Don Bosco prep and a priority target for Nikhil Shorts. It's going to dictate what happens next week with those two guys. I think they're really only looking for 2 more receivers. You're seeing them kind of get active again in the tight end market, getting 2 tight ends to campus this weekend, one on an unofficial team camp visit, one on an official visit. So you're looking at probably 3 to 4 total pass catcher additions still to come. And it could be one more if let's say Howard flips to Georgia Tech, or they get an idea that Howard's moving on. They're more than happy, I think, to move on all 3. But yeah, big deal. Just in the sense that you eliminate some of the wild cards. He could have gone to Colorado this weekend, could have gone to LSU. I saw both of those programs as wild cards. Still expected at Virginia Tech next weekend. We'll see if that visit happens. I would say I think Nebraska has a chance to get this done this weekend. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out over this weekend, going into next week. I know he really liked that UCLA visit, but that was his first time out there. I just don't think he's going to go across the country on off the strength of one visit, And so I still like Nebraska. I like them going into the weekend. My question with this recruitment is just going to be: do they love him more than Isaiah Alvarez and Khalil Taylor, to the point that they would accept his commitment regardless of, and knowing they still have those 2 coming to visit? So that's something I'm waiting to see. I think that's something the staff is going to be working through over these next few days, is just how to best position this wide receiver room moving forward.
Yeah, ominous foreshadowing. A couple weeks ago, we talked about it. I think Michigan State and Nebraska will be one of those schools, which makes the game even more fascinating, not just because of year 1 fits, but he's put together a very formidable staff. Peeling Max Bulla away, making him co-defensive coordinator in East Lansing, a guy that when he was at Notre Dame recruited this area very well. Obviously, LeVar Woods, that addition, recruits this area very well. Nebraska loses 2 top linebacker targets to Michigan State. Just kind of going to be par for the course with how they like to recruit, or maybe just a cycle-by-cycle thing?
Something of a cycle-by-cycle thing. I wonder a little bit with Nebraska this cycle how much the work they did in the portal and the work they've done in the linebacker room to this point actually kind of hurt them this cycle, where, there are other programs that can maybe promise early playing time. I don't think Nebraska can really afford to promise anybody that. I don't think there's a linebacker prospect out there that they feel good about with what the depth they've got. You've got Dexter Foster coming back for, you've got multiple years of eligibility with Dexter Foster. You got multiple years of eligibility with Will Hawthorne. They're excited about Pierce Newberry. They're excited about Vincent Shavers. You still have Christian Jones in the room. You still have Dawson Merritt in the room. It's a room with some depth. But that said, that you could tell Orich wanted. I mean, Orich expanded the board and was clearly looking for size, was clearly looking for 1 to 2 inside linebackers this cycle, was clearly looking for 1 to 2 inside linebackers this cycle. I don't think my level of concern with the linebacker recruiting is as is to the point that it is with edge, even with, Massimo set to visit this weekend at edge and potentially flip from Minnesota. I still think there's still some work to be done at edge more so than linebacker. But yeah, I mean, this feels like it. I wouldn't say ominous, but like it's somewhat ominous of just you wanted to see Nebraska. You've seen the complaints of like, oh, how's Nebraska recruiting national linebackers? Why are they going after they should stay in the region and recruit the way Illinois and Michigan State and Iowa do. And then they start doing that, and guess what? It's like they lose to Penn State on Blake Betten. They lose to Oregon on Brandon Lockley, and then you lose to Michigan State on these two guys and Henry Sakalis and Matthew Brady. And with those two in particular, it was going to be tough. I mean, both of those recruitments heated up so fast, and you think about both of those guys, what they're looking for. It makes a ton of sense that Michigan State staff made an impression on them. Like, I think back on the conversation I had with Matthew Brady when he made the first Nebraska visit, and what he was looking for in the linebackers coach in a future home. And I was like, oh yeah, it makes a ton of sense why he went to Michigan State. Like, he's a new linebacker looking for the best development possible at the position, looking for, like a staff that, keys in on that position. He had plenty of options, but I think of his options, he felt Michigan State was the best one, not just for his development, but also for an opportunity to get on the field earlier. I don't know for both of those guys if there was going to be that opportunity to see the field at Nebraska in year one. Like there may be at Michigan State and some of the other programs they were considering. But yeah, overall, that's not to justify the loss of this. It stings. I think it stings. And you're in a point now where linebacker recruiting, you may have to just kind of accept commits and just kind of take some guys when you had a chance to add, a couple really good athletes, I thought, in Matthew Brady, Henry Sakalis, and Blake Betten. If you had landed just one of the three, I feel really good about the future of the linebacker room. And now we're at a point where it's like, okay, well, it may have to be the portal in terms of setting up for the future, or kind of hoping the young guys on the roster currently continue to develop and continue to take steps forward.
I think it's interesting because one of those three guys that you mentioned, I think as the evaluation got along, I think Nebraska differed greatly on the eval, and I think ultimately was why one of the particular players chose another school. Where I'm not going to say Nebraska cooled, but I think down the stretch, the more tape and the film study and visits, it's just such a fascinating process with these guys. And Ravi talked about it earlier about when he asked you about rankings versus height versus what the tape actually says. It's such a fascinating deal once you know exactly what you're looking for. And I by no means am saying, Nebraska is Iowa or Illinois or some of these schools that know what they want regardless of star rankings. But I do think this cycle is fascinating that they haven't necessarily gone by what the perception is. They appear to really be doing their own due diligence for an extended period of time. They clearly know what they're looking for, especially at positions with like Orich at the linebacker spot. Like, I think we'll see more development there because there's a very concrete idea of what they want it to look like. You can tell by the body. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's something I kind of picked up.
Guys that didn't eventually say yes, but I do know for a fact one of those guys, I watched with those guys, and I know what some of the concerns were, and it's not to the popular consensus. It's their own eval on what they're looking for.
Right. And that makes sense it's something I think has been informative from camps was, hey, like yesterday, I just kind of spent 20 minutes just watching Jeep Wade coach.
Isn't it fascinating? Or
yes.
The other one I learned about. My question to you was going to be, can you tell by watching these guys work their drills even more what they're looking for in their evaluation?
Yeah. Jeep in particular was one that just 20 minutes around him, I was like, like he's a dude, man. He's a dude. And I like the way he, tries to get his verbiage across the guys very early on and just set that across the board of just like, hey, here's how we're going to be talking. Here's what I'm going to be saying. and then from there, sets like I thought he did a good job of. I thought Garrett got better as the day went on, just from working with Jeep. I thought all those guys got better. I think his attention to detail is really fascinating. He clearly knows, like, because sometimes with coaches, you get them at camp, or you see them at camp, and it's a lot of when they have a big group, it's they're working minor things, or they're working little things, or it's like or it's just kind of going off of, hey, I need you to have a flatter back here. Hey, you need to get lower in your stance. Hey, you need to do this. And then it's just like Jeep walking up to Garrett and in his stance, and he's just like, you're too tense. You need to loosen up. And he's like, Tyler, explain to him what loosening up means. And then he just had a current player explain from the verbiage standpoint what this is supposed to look like. And it's like, well, okay, look, like just me off, or just not me, but like a guy off the street's not going to be able to tell, oh, that guy's too tense in his stance. He's just in his stance. But I think Jeep was able to break down some of that stuff. I think the really fascinating thing for me was the attention to detail on the body control and the weight distribution.
That's what I liked about Corey Brown and Yelk too.
There's so much emphasis on that, being a controlled athlete.
I just and you're a big body control guy, because you're one of the few people that I spend a lot of time around that understands that body control is actually it's a skill and a talent.
That's how I define athleticism, is how well you control your body.
It's fascinating. I enjoyed watching Corey Brown a little bit, but let me last one from me, TV. When you're going through these recruiting cycles, and we're doing our own evals, you spend a lot of time watching guys. You're a meticulous note taker. You travel. How long do you think, how much data do you think you'll need before you start understanding or having a good grasp whether this is a financial thing, this is a recruitment thing, this is this is a price-driven market thing where it's like, yeah, I could see why some teams treat you like this based on some intangibles, because we're watching guys. We get an idea of what it takes to recruit them. Then you actually watch them, and are you getting enough data on how you think, yeah, he's asking for too much, or he's going to be a steal? Like, do you have enough anecdotal evidence yet as you kind of look at the market?
Somewhat. I would say it depends. Like at the Power 4 level, I think I have an idea of that. I think, especially I would say in the Big Ten and SEC, of what a steal looks like, what maybe an overpay looks like, what a reach looks like. But the market is still so undefined that it is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, yeah, like I maybe wouldn't have paid him that, but if your salary cap is 15 million more than the salary cap that most programs are operating on, then sure, like you spend that money, go for it. I think for me, I would say, like, I think in 27, what's been really informative has been seeing, like, I think this has been the first year where you're starting to see teams approach the recruitment from the jump with NIL strategy. This is I think this has been the first cycle where you've seen that. I think you're going to see it even more so in 28 moving forward. I my general policy is, because I'm for the kids too. It's like, look, your value is what someone's willing to pay you. If someone's willing to pay you that much to go play football for them, then yeah, that's what your value is, because this is an undefined market, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's you do have to be fair. You have to be honest about where these players kind of slot in, what some of these players are asking for, and again, the impact. Like I would say this generally as a baseline at the Power 4 level, it's hard for me to excuse a program spending real money and getting into a real, I would say, bidding war for a prospect that is a true developmental prospect. Like, you don't see that guy contributing into the first 2 years at the program in any sort of way, because he needs time to develop. I have a hard time justifying that with the limited roster spots in this day and age, with the sense of urgency. I would say, especially at a few positions. I would say wide receiver is one of those positions. I mean, you have no excuse to not put up. If you're a powerful program, you have no excuse not to have a productive wide receiver room. Development is at an all-time high level. There's so many wide receiver prospects now, and they all play 7-on-7. They're all further developed than a decade ago. I just don't think there's an excuse to not have good receivers. I would say DBs. Right, exactly, and it's at the power. If you're a powerful program, the only excuse I would say, and again, that's not even an excuse because you should be better at this, is you just have a bad eye and you took the wrong guys. That's the only excuse really at a power 4 level to have a bad receiver room. But if you've got it, if you know what you're looking for, yeah, there's no excuse. You can there's plenty of opportunity out there at receiver, but there's a few other positions like that. I would say interior of the offensive line is one of those where, like, look, the high end of it looks much different than a lot of the rest, but there's a lot of interior guys out there. They all come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. You can develop them. Cornerback for me is another one, even though again at that very high end it looks different, but the overall point is like you have to one. I think there's a misconception out there in the market that there's this big discrepancy in money program to program. Oftentimes it's within a couple, like it's not that much. It's what's really separating them is ultimately the non-NIL stuff. It's the other factors that are separating these programs. But two, I think
like housing or like what do you mean?
No, look, so it'll be coaching, it'll be relationships, it'll be the opportunity to be developed. If I've got, let's say I've got $300K on the table from one program and $320 from the other program, and one is, hey, we've got a 2-year deal. The other one's, hey, a 1 year, and then we'll renegotiate after or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, I like both of these programs a whole lot. I'm going to be looking at and this is how the kids work too. I'm going to be looking at the coach I have a better relationship with. Then I'm going to be looking at, okay, well, who produces more NFL talent? Well, okay, well, if I wasn't a football player, would I still like being a student athlete here? Those are the 3 factors we hear the most from recruits that matter the most outside of, and that none of them mention NIL. Obviously it matters, but none of them mention it like that because these are the first 3 things they mention typically.
To the point we were talking about in the first segment, where just simply showing up every day, right? Do I enjoy being here?
Yeah,
is so understated, TV, but apparently not to you because you just listed that in like your top 3. But
when we talk about this generally,
I think we're missing the mark on that. Like, do I genuinely like being here?
Yeah.
It's all that's something the best out of someone, right? Like you get the best out of people when they enjoy the place they're at.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that stuff that like, and that's why some of it, like we talk about, there's some of this conversation too. What kind of sucks about this is, okay, when you zoom out and look at the grand scale of things, if you're a young, let's say 29 prospect now, who had a good freshman season, is starting to generate some recruiting buzz, you're going to be pretty picky and choosing where you go to camps, or you may have a parent that's going to send you to a bunch of different camps. And you go to the camps and you perform well or whatever. And, some schools are just going to be looking at you and maybe you have the leverage as this, this 29 that had a good, so you're going to get the, relatively, you're going to get the red carpet roll for you on the camp. You're going to have, it's going to go, you're just going to be able to kind of go through the motions. They're going to pull you away regardless of what you do into the separate group that gets the private workout, and all of that. And you can kind of laze through it and be okay. And the school learns nothing about your character and learns nothing about who you are as a football player. And that's really unfortunate, where like I think again what it used to be was everyone would go out and camp regardless of what you did as a freshman. Then you learn about these guys, what how they're wired, who's coachable, who's not. I would say in the NIL era more so than ever, the off the field eval is so critical. Like, do these guys love football? Are these guys, do they have a good head on their hair? Can we trust them? We're investing money in these guys. Can we trust them with the money we've invested in them? But then, we also the kids have so much leverage now, and the players have so much leverage, and the market is where it's at, where schools, media, athletic departments they don't often get the full view of what the kid's personality is or how he's truly wired until he gets to campus.
I mean, you know what? It reminds me of your favorite Signetti quote, just being willing to say no.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, you're not going to come to campus so I can get a feel for that? Sorry, no.
And, you know, it's just fascinating. It's like the first segment all over again. Because TV, I think, you know what's interesting is coaches, I think, they're not saying it out loud because you can't deter good players from wanting to come to your school. But nobody wants to coach somebody that's just for the money. So the more time you can spend around them, obviously the better gauge you can get on that. Because at the end of the day, if you're chasing it, they'll go chase it someplace else the minute it gets tough. And coaches, they hate being at the mercy of that.
Yeah, and you don't need to put yourself there. The rosters, again, you also have the rosters basically flip over every 6 months at this point, if not a year. You know, the rosters basically flip. Like, you don't need to put yourself in that position where you're wasting a roster spot on a guy where, okay, we're gonna invest all this time into recruiting him. We're gonna invest 6 months in developing him. We're gonna invest, we're gonna have him, make sure he's not pissed off on the football field as a freshman, make sure he gets out on the field. Oh, well, he was a little pissed off and he left. Like something happened and he left. And what are we going to do? We invested all that time and all that resources in him. And we could have just had, another DB who wanted to really be here, or another whatever who wanted to really be here and worked his ass off or whatever. And, camped and did all of this but wasn't maybe the athlete, or wasn't the caliber from a prospect standpoint, didn't have the stars by his name.
The Kia Summer Sticker Sales event is on at Edwards Kia. Lease the 2026 Kia Sportage Hybrid S all-wheel drive starting at $299 a month. Edwards Kia is on a winning streak. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2027 Kia Telluride S all-wheel drive starting at $469 a month. Don't wait. Slide into savings with the Edwards Kia Summer Sticker Sales event. Slide into savings at Edwards Hyundai. Finance the 2026 Hyundai Santa Fe at 0% for 72 months. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Hyundai Kona SE all-wheel drive. Sign and drive starting at $287 a month with 0 down. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Hyundai. It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Nissan. Lease the 2026 Nissan Rogue Platinum starting at $379 a month, a platinum lease worth driving home. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Nissan Pathfinder SV starting at $399 a month while supplies last. Don't miss your pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Nissan.
I've made a lot of good decisions in my life. Perhaps the best lately is just being a part of what NextGen is doing, from, testosterone to peptides to hydration, just to overall health and well-being. NextGen has been fantastic for me. They accept most insurances, so they make it really, really easy. And I'm always, listen, I'm not the most fun to get along with, but these guys have been fantastic. It's not just a DB thing. It can be you too. Visit the folks at NextGen, 402-614-9700. I feel like I just saw you.
Yeah, no doubt. Good to see you. I was going to say this. So, my favorite person to watch move around at camps is Justin Owens. He's now the general manager at Texas State. But back when I was making the rounds and at these camps down in Texas, he was, kind of still working on my end, on the media end. He was working with kids down in the greater Dallas area. And watching him at camps was always so fun, because we'd be at SMU or we'd be at TCU, one of these big mega camps where you've got 30 plus programs, you've got 300 plus kids, and he is talking to everybody. Like, no joke, it's a row of college coaches, and just down the line you're seeing just move down and talk to everybody. And then you're getting out throughout the day and you're going into indie drills, and he's making sure his guys are at the front of the line working out on the reps. And I haven't been around in a minute, but I can't even imagine what it looks like now when he's got his own camps that he's running, and those are all his kids now. It's like, hey, these are 150 kids and they're all mine. I need to eval all, like, what that looks like now. My second favorite person to watch at camps might be you, DB.
Oh shoot, I'm wild, Tim. Like, I hope, don't pay me any mind, man. I'm gonna need you to elaborate. I wondered where you were going. I was like, oh, that's how he learned to watch camps. But you hit me.
No, O taught me a lot. O's my mentor in a lot of different ways on this eval stuff. But yeah, I learned a lot from him on how to run this camp stuff and how to operate. But no, man, you get around too. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, like, I'm very, very weird, Tim. Just, and you're like this just in, because there's certain things that I'm always looking for, right? And sometimes it just depends. Like, I don't really go in with, okay, this, and this per se. I start with whatever the first conversations are, and then I kind of go with it. But I'm trying to cover, like, every square inch, right? So I'm definitely a mover. Because I kind of know what I'm looking for after a while. Mm-hmm. And I try to pay attention and pit what's been told to me over time to see, like, the practical applications of it. So I tell people, like, I'm sure I'm fascinating, but I don't know how much you would enjoy being around me in those kind of settings, right? I'm good with you because I like the way you work, but it's
no diggity.
It's yeah. Some other people, it's not like that, right? Like, Sip would not be getting on the show this morning and saying the same thing. But I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
So, yeah. Tim, we've been talking a little bit this morning about, well, lots of different stuff, but I want to start. One of our commenters has been kind of asking this question about the way staffs feel about guys versus the way the recruiting services feel. And you don't necessarily have to name names unless you're comfortable doing it. It's a child.
No. I'm just trying to put it back up here. AJ, I need you. I can't get it back up here. Keep going, Ravi. I'm sorry.
Are there
My
guys that
ADD just
you,
kicked in.
because I know you like to do your own evals, right? And that's not to
Mhm.
take anything away from the services that kind of do a more broad strokes type thing. But like, are there guys that you kind of have just like off the top of your head that you're to the good or to the bad, where you're just like, hey, the eval's way off on this guy on a national perspective, and either you ended up being right or you're like somebody you were just like really convicted about, like, yeah, this isn't like
It's funny you asked this question.
the eval is not the eval is not where we're at. And it could be, listen, if you don't want to like bus roll anybody, it could be to the positive also.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely plenty of both. I've kind of been collecting, I would say, some of those receipts because that's stuff that goes out of college. Is that stuff that helps me in my career? So,
I mean, I've seen
yeah,
you
I mean,
tweet out, like guys that you liked early that end up getting drafted or whatever that never ended up being like 4 or 5 stars. Like I've seen that.
yeah, and so I think for me, like, I mean, I think this is a good example to kind of tell a story and kind of paint, um, just how it shapes how I view things now. So Devin Sanchez, 5-star cornerback, a cycle ago, ended up at Ohio State, started or played a good bit as a freshman, had some ups and downs walking into year 2, expected to be a starter and take a jump. He's the best corner prospect I've been around, and I've been around him since I was around him when he was a freshman in high school. I got to see him develop. I've been at, just the way my own career and where my timeline was at just happened to align with his own development. And so I got to see, private development or private training sessions, this the off season before his junior season, then the off season before his senior season, and watch that growth, watch that development. And so, I was convinced pretty early on he was one of the better DBs I had seen. Before him, it was Denver Harris, the infamous Denver Harris, who started his career at Texas A&M, bounced around a little bit. And the thing with Denver was always, hey, technically he's really sound, but he's right around 5'11", 6 foot, good athlete, not a phenomenal athlete, and then you get around Devin and it's like, oh wow, it's all of the same technique, except now he's 6'3" with fluid hips and really good ball skills and a great head on his shoulders and really understands how the game works. And so Devin, I think getting around him very early and often has completely recalibrated what it takes for me to be impressed by a high school cornerback. I was at OT7 a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago at this point, back in April. John Mayer, the number 1 cornerback in the country, was there. A couple other top corner targets were there. And look, I mean, again, like I'm able to, I feel like I'm able to, see things fairly, but I would say getting around Devin when I did has completely been okay. Well, John, like you're not this or this, like this, you're not that. There's a standard now for me, at least when I evaluate the position, where if you're not this, I can't have you ranked top 5. Regardless of position, as a corner, like you have to be moving like this guy for me to see you as a top 5 prospect, regardless of position.
So where do you marry the, hey, I see you in workouts, I see you in camps and things like that, and you have to move like this versus what it looks like on tape on Friday nights? Like, where does that get weighed in the equation?
Ooh, it was interesting. I was just thinking about this on my drive home yesterday. And I think we're getting to a point. We're getting to a point where, I was talking to some people about this yesterday at camp too. Like camps aren't what they maybe used to be even just a couple of years ago, just in terms of, look, like the eval timeline has completely changed, and like, like even Nebraska's had a couple 27s the last couple days. We could see 1, 2, maybe 3 offers from the last 2 days, at least in the 27 cycle. I'm not expecting much, if any, though. Like there just isn't that time, and there isn't really that. Everything's kind of moved up to a point where it's tough to make it's tough to find these late bloomers, but also, you have an idea of what these guys are pretty early on. I'm like yesterday, Nebraska wanted to get eyes on Garrett Duarte. I wanted to get eyes on Garrett Duarte. It was really helpful to get eyes on him. But, I don't know how much I learned yesterday from getting around him. I think just checked boxes for me more than anything. For me, I was like, okay, well, I really like what he put up on tape, despite playing, at a smaller program, and despite playing, he's he's so big and the competition, it's just dominant. But there was a lot on tape that I was like, okay, well, technically he's a little further along than you expect. He's a good athlete. You like the frame, you like all of that. And again, I was just getting around him in person and getting those eyes and being like, okay, well, yes, athletic lower body. Oh, okay, look, he's got some really controlled athleticism. I think he does a good job of, he wasn't super clean in one-on-ones. The footwork wasn't clean, but he kept his feet moving. He every time it felt like he was losing ground. He'd stab. He'd jab you right in the chest. And create some, I would say, some time for himself to recover a little bit. So the point is for me now, a lot of these camps are just confirming what I've seen on tape, or vice versa. Like, there were a couple guys yesterday I saw that was like, okay, well, that guy moves around well. That guy moves around like how I want. I'm going to be tracking him moving forward. But if you're a junior or senior, or going into junior senior, so for this camp, it would be 27, 28, 27 in particular. If you're 27 moving around well, and I haven't watched the film, like I just have a hard time seeing it happening. So it's like 28s, 29s moving forward. It's a lot of that. Like, so the camp timeline has changed, just and how the value of some of these, I would say, high school evals have changed. The early evals are still super important, I would say. Like, getting in early on even some of these 28s, I would say you're still relatively getting in early on Garrett Duarte. I would say you're getting in somewhat early on. I would say you're getting in, so you're getting in somewhat early on a on guys younger in this cycle too. There was an O lineman from Blue Hill, Nebraska, who pulled up to the the 5-on-5 big man camp at 6'5", 305. Like that just frames that don't pop up in small town Nebraska like that. And so it was good to see a guy like him. Was good to see him work on both sides of the line. Actually, he's someone that I'm a little more intrigued by as a defensive line prospect long term. But I don't know. I'm excited to see what this looks like. I don't know if we are. I know we've lost some audio. So
You're still live. We just lost the Wi-Fi for them, so they'll be coming back here shortly.
Cool. All right, I'm looking at some comments though. We got a comment on how is Keemon Spell ranked ahead of DGG, Dave Gabriel Georges. I believe that's how I would say. I've just been calling him DGG. He's the 5-star expected to be Ohio State running back commit. I don't remember if he's committed. There's a lot happening. But no, I agree. DGG should be ranked ahead of Spell. I don't really know what. I think Spell's been out. Spell's been out on more camps. Spell's been out to more events. So I think national evaluators have seen him a little more. But no, DGG is like what you're looking for at the position. He's as clean cut of an eval I think we've had at the position in a couple of years.
Tim, when you're you're talking about the difference of tape versus camp and seeing things like that. Like, does that help you? Because we've get a lot of people, I'm sure you hear them on your message boards and stuff like that, where people say, hey, why does Nebraska need to see these guys at camp? They're local, especially with local guys, right? They're like, hey, they're local. They can go see them at their high school, stuff like that. Like, do you understand, because you do a lot of this, why they want to see them at camp as opposed to just in either high school settings or game settings? Like, it seems like you pick up a lot more from that. Do you understand why the coaches want to see that as well?
Yes, absolutely. Look, there's a couple of reasons. And, it's funny. I did have this conversation with somebody yesterday. It wasn't a Nebraska assistant necessarily. It was one of the other coaches there, just talking like, back in the day, you used to have to come to camp to earn the offer. You wouldn't get the offer until you camped. And especially if you were a local prospect. But now the leverage has changed. Some of the kids have some of the leverage now. And so the game has changed a little bit. And so, but I think it's still valuable. And I understand why Nebraska does it for a couple of reasons. One, I think camp's a really good opportunity to work guys at multiple positions. You may like a guy at one position, or a guy may be dead set on one position. You may be recruiting him like lightly at that position, but you want to get eyes on him. You want to see what that looks like. A name that comes to mind yesterday, they worked Thatcher Shelton out, the defensive or the quarterback out of Lincoln Southwest, 2028 QB. They worked him out a defensive back. He's 6'1", 175 pounds, tremendous athlete. He's put out good 40s. He put up a good 40 at the All-American Combine when I saw him back in January. He put a good 40 up yesterday. Has good track times as well. So a phenomenal athlete, but he wants to give it his best shot at quarterback. But you understand, Nebraska liked the 40 time. They like some of the instincts with him, so they got him working at DB. And it wasn't clean. I mean, DB, you were watching it too, but I thought he did a good job of adjusting and kind of utilizing his athleticism as the day went on.
Southwest quarterback.
So he's okay. So I want to. I'm not going to ask the obvious question. Well, sure. Let's stay in state with that. I like the fact that he's a good athlete, and I thought Southeast was well represented because I look at guys like I was talking about Will Manning earlier.
I know Will look good.
So that's what I thought. And I try to be part of the reason, Tim, I get in my own kind of zone is I try to do a really good job of being objective. And so I try to put the Coach Manning thing aside and how long I've watched Will. But I thought he did very well for himself. He's got that good thick neck. You could see how he leads the state in tackling. He showed some twitch. Doesn't have elite size, but he's a ball finder. I thought he had a really good night. If we want to start with the local guys, let's start there.
Yeah, he was one I thought. Yeah, had a good day. It was a few. I mean, it was a few working at. I would say working at because they cross trained a lot of the linebackers and tight ends, and I thought yesterday some of those guys. Working both sides. It was another, I'm trying to find it in my notes, but it was another, the Southwest tight end, Madden Schwager in 2028. I thought he was another one that moved around well at linebacker.
2028's fared well, stayed there, obviously. Let's go to, what'd you think about Micah? Somebody that you've watched, you pay pretty good attention to. I actually thought, like, objectively, I'm kind of a jerk. He was significantly better against higher end talent and one-on-ones than I thought.
Yeah, I didn't get to see all of his one-on-ones. I was kind of bouncing back and forth between O-line, D-line one-on-ones and wide receiver DB one-on-ones. But a lot of my focus on him was in drills. I think some of it was you can kind of tell he's working through like technique this offseason. Like you can tell he's really dialed in on that. But you can still see it's a work in progress. You can still see this is a high school sophomore going on his junior season and still kind of learning some of this stuff. But you can see, again, I thought it was good when they separated him. Again, seeing him work against like a guy like Thatcher, not against, but, him down the line and Thatcher down the line. I'm just seeing the okay, hey, this is what it looks like when you've been working at the position for a few years and you're working on the technique and you're a capable athlete, like you check the boxes athletically, I would say, and so I thought I liked getting to see him move around a little bit. He a couple of times on breaks felt like it's still working, like he's still getting smooth. Flipping his hips and getting in and out of breaks. So, a lot of the physicality stuff with him has been answered for me. Like we saw that in the fall, I wasn't going to learn anything about that at a camp. I wanted to see what it looked like with the growth spurt, what it looked like moving around a little bit. Was encouraged, I think, by all of that. And from what I saw in one-on-ones, I do also wonder a little bit about maybe moving him back a little bit to safety nickel versus
that's what he's going to play. He's no longer playing corner. He's an inside guy.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think that's probably what he's best at this point. What'd
you think about? Oh, go ahead if you want to ask me one more question.
No, go ahead.
What'd you think about Conkey?
I was hoping to see a little more from him in terms of changing direction. but I like the overall athletic profile with the length. I was pleasantly surprised by the length. I hadn't got. I mean, know what he's listed at, but getting around him a little bit, I did think generally he moved around as one of the better DBs out there, but flipping his hips, changing directions, especially when you're listed as a corner, like it's just stuff like that where it was like, I just wanted that to be a little smoother. But tremendous athlete. I think there's a lot to like in just the overall ball of clay there.
I just seen Evan Robinson in 7-on-7. He left Southwest to play at Millard North. What'd you think?
He was one I did not get nearly enough eyes. I didn't think I didn't spend enough time around him. I'm hoping he's back at the 7-on-7 a couple of weeks later, but yeah, he was one I was hoping to get a little more exposure to, and I didn't yesterday.
Let's stay regional for a quick sec. What'd you think about Brock Barrows?
I like Brock. I've liked Brock for a while.
Another 2028 they're in on early.
Yeah, he's just one I wish was bigger, like when I saw him young, I was actually I was telling somebody yesterday too. I was watching O-line D-line or O-line Indy. I've been watching Brock since he was in 8th grade, and he reminded me a lot of Gibson Pyle, because I saw Gibson Pyle when he was in 9th grade, going into 10th grade. And Gibson, he had a random growth spurt in high school that, it just went from, whoa, okay, well, who's this skinny little kid who, is working through O-line stuff and has some promise to, okay, there's a D1, there's a power 4 offensive line prospect, it happened very quickly with him, but there was a lot of similarities, I think, in the early on profiles of both of those guys. Brock just hasn't grown to the same extent. He measured in yesterday at like 6'1", I believe. It's not to say it can't work. I mean, Justin Evans, but you can make it work at 6'1", but he's someone who, man, he's just a football player. Like I think he does a good job of pairing. I wrote it in my notes. He does a good job of pairing physicality with finesse, especially in one-on-ones. Like he'll beat you. He'll take you to the ground, but he's going to do it in a graceful way. He's going to I think he does a really good job along the interior. I just wish he was bigger at this point in his development. And I wonder with where he's at, what opportunities are going to be out there, because I know he's got a ton of regional interest, but unless he grows unless I think the tape looks more consistent, because I did see him in the fall too, and I'm hoping for a little more consistent junior tape.
Yeah, we play Lee Summit in week 2, so I'm always weird with my what I'm paying attention to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's fun, man. He's a good kid too. I really enjoy him.
Fridays are for big plays and even bigger bites at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Grab the Hail Varsity Burger Meal for just $12, stacked with all the classics and served up with game day energy. Pair it with your favorite drink, find your seat, and let the weekend begin. Friday nights belong to Hurrdat Sports Bar. Tim, when you're looking at this upcoming weekend, right? Obviously, last weekend, a ton of commitments. I think most of which you expected, maybe not all on the timeline that they happened, but I think when we talked, I don't think there was a ton of surprises in terms of who actually ended up putting their name in for Nebraska. When you're looking at this weekend, whether it's Kuhn, whether it's Jalen Hill, whose schedule got all messed up from last weekend, Kittrell, and then there's a couple that I find really interesting with Caleb Green and Justin Lindsay. How do you see this weekend shaping up versus last weekend?
Yeah, so some of it is, I think you've seen some, as a result of early decisions, some shuffling around. I mean, look, like one of the headliners of this weekend was supposed to be Khalil Taylor, but he went to Penn State last weekend, and now he's canceled all his OVs. Nebraska's, kind of working back in there, but this thing seems to be going Penn State's direction. He's got a set commitment time, and that's just really kind of why the reason he hasn't really announced it to this point. And so some of it has been, I would say with the new wide receiver edition and the new linebacker edition is where the board's shifting. And some of it is where Nebraska's at, what they've done to this point, and what they feel they still need to do. They have a couple of DBs in this weekend, but really it's just kind of trying to put the finishing touches on the class, on that secondary class, and prepare for, with Torrey Pittman in LSU this weekend, prepare for any possibilities. With Green, I think the Nebraska got the confidence because, they've been monitoring him for some time, but he had a productive junior season, but getting to see him on the field workout this last Sunday and see him run the time he put up. I believe he put up a 4.5 in the 40. That was a good time for him. And that's the time where I think it's gotten Nebraska confident in extending that offer and now pushing for the flip.
When you're looking at kind of the eval period for what's happening with guys, it seems like, and it's not just Nebraska, right? Just being at some of these other places where the window to say yes seems to be a little more finite, where the parameters in which they're wanting players to make decisions, I wouldn't call it pressure, but it's certainly not wide open. Are you seeing the conjunction with when people want to make announcements? Do you think that kind of lines up with the time frames that the institutions are either openly or behind the scenes seeking from folks that they're recruiting?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, even I think there's not a handful, but there are guys obviously that can afford to say. I mean, Khalil Taylor's one that can afford to say, "Hey, I'm not committing till July 6th. You're going to know when I'm going dead." And all of these schools kind of have to kind of wait and see what happens then. Bay Whitfield, the defensive back on campus this weekend, he's going to announce his commitment on July 6th as well, and that's another one where he can afford to do that, and Nebraska's going to have to wait him out, and other programs are going to have to wait him out and wait for his decision. But it will impact class size. It's kind of one of those things where for some guy, I mean, Jalen Hale, for example, was planning to announce in August and, has moved that timeline up to June now just because he wants to claim a spot in the class, and so it's kind of, it just really depends on who you are, the type of targets you're pursuing and where things kind of stand, like I would say, and I put this out last night or yesterday, but like with Torrey Pittman at LSU this weekend, more likely than not, from what I've been able to gather, if he doesn't tell LSU yes this weekend, LSU's probably moving on. There's not really going to be that LSU presence in that recruitment beyond this weekend, unless he flips. Like it's going to have to be like it happens this weekend or it's not. So at some schools, you're seeing this pressure where it's like, hey, it has to happen now, or we're not going to continue to pursue. And Nebraska is not one of those programs that puts pressure on guys, but I think this cycle more than most has been one of those cycles where not just at Nebraska but other places, because there's everyone's micromanaging numbers between trying to stay within the 105 cap, trying to make sure they have numbers for the portal, and trying to make sure they're doing a good job of bringing in value here in the 27 cycle, not just spending money for the sake of spending money, not just bringing in guys for the sake of bringing in guys. I think you are seeing a tighter cap on numbers, and you're seeing some tough decisions being made. Guys that maybe in years past probably would have been taken, when there wasn't a roster cap, are now, it's kind of, we'll have to wait and see what the senior eval looks like. Oh, we're pretty capped out at that position. Like, it's not what it used to be, unfortunately. And so, yeah, you're seeing some guys getting stiffed on opportunities. You're also seeing schools, having to make some tough decisions where they have to, it's guys maybe, someone on staff really likes, but, further up the chain, it's getting called off because they just don't have the space.
Let me ask you something where it's like, because kind of what I think happens is just the opposite of how we would think. If you get an early commitment from, like, let's say, a sophomore or a junior, there's a good chance that there's an exchange of some monetary deal, whether it's a commitment, it's a yes bonus or something like that, where you have the opportunity to gain income. Schools can get themselves in a bind as the evaluations continue and you're watching guys develop or other guys become available. I could see schools being in a bind where it's like, God, we've already committed X amount of dollars to a player that you may not ultimately end up either wanting or taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
no, I mean, there's some of that.
Thing.
Yeah, there's some of that. And so that's where you have to be careful. And that's where, you have to watch. And that's what I think teams are starting to. I would say there are a lot of lessons being learned through the early portion of the NIL era and where we're at now, where teams are, I think, a little more careful in how much they're allocating. You're seeing a little more, I think, smarter communication and smarter deals where, okay, we're not banking on you, contributing in year one. we want you to be here in year 2, though. So we're going to scale this thing. Year 1, we want you to be a depth piece. We don't think you're, and so it's a 2-year deal and it's scaled. I think of an example.
A lot of
and
these guys want 2-year deals now too. So
Right. I mean, I can talk about this example. Texas, for example, had a linebacker this last portal cycle named Elijah Barnes from the state of Texas, who, his freshman year sat on the bench, went to Texas and renegotiated and was like, hey, I'm getting paid this much. I want this much. And, or tried to renegotiate. But, it was a thing of Texans was just not on the ball, did not realize, like they needed linebacker depth, and Kentucky went out and paid him. And so he's at Kentucky now. And Texas is in a weird spot heading into the season. They have national championship goals. They aim to be in that final group. And their linebacker depth is not that great. And you know what? If they had maybe signed a 2-year deal, if they were a little savvy in how they had navigated that thing from the jump and communicating, hey, year 1, we're not going to have to pay you too much because you're not going to be playing. But year 2, we need you. We need you as a depth piece. That was properly communicated. That had been dealt with effectively at the jump of that recruitment. Maybe they're not in this position where they are, kind of struggling here for depth and at linebacker. And we're closing in the season. There's not a whole lot of flexibility in being able to add more to the roster.
Tim, we've mentioned Torrey Pittman a couple times here, whether it's the visit to LSU this weekend or just kind of where he fits in terms of the defensive backboard. I'm curious with the way that his recruitment has gone. The commitment seemed kind of unexpected last fall in terms of the timing of it, at least that from what I understand. Mm-hmm. And then now he's sort of exploring his options. Where do you think Nebraska stands with Torrey Pittman? Not just from maybe the interest from other places, but maybe their interest in him as well. Has anything changed there? Because at least from my perspective, he's one of the guys where I would have liked to see a little more on tape last year.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation on here before too, of like, yeah, that's where the conversation's at. I think Nebraska, there's no denying, look, the skill set is there. The talent is in there, but it's a lot of the effort, the consistent effort, the wanting to see that consistently, wanting to see you dominate as you're a top 50 talent in the country per the rankings. Look, I've been around a good bit. I know what a top 50 talent looks like. They make plays. They dominate on Friday nights. I need to see a little more of that from him as a senior. But look, was that Miller North yesterday? Was asking around a little bit about Torrey. He left. He'd already gone to LSU, but asking around and look, he sounds like he is very. He's very self-aware about this. Very self-aware about what the film is to this point and what he needs to do as a senior. And I think he's starting to get it too in terms of, hey, from a coaching standpoint, from a buying standpoint, like I need to be a little more developed before I get to Nebraska because, there's other guys coming in and his ranking is not going to help him once he gets to Nebraska. You know what I mean? Like once he gets there, it's okay. You got to be in the system. You got to be knowing it. And look, Corey Hadley is going to be coming to the program ready to go. Bryce Williams is going to come into the program ready to go. Whoever else they add here, Jalen Hill, Ben, whoever they add here in this DB room, they want those guys to be ready to go coming in and ready to compete. Torrey Pittman's going to come in and see, freshman year, what it looked like with Danny Odom, and so I think for him, it's all starting to click. We're about 6 months away, or just about from that, from him being ready to enroll. And, Nebraska still wants him. I think they want an opportunity to work with that talent, develop that talent. But it's definitely one of those things with where the tape is at. I said this yesterday too. If this turns into, I don't think either program here, LSU or Nebraska, has the appetite to get in a bidding war over a prospect like that. I don't think they have that appetite. And so look, if Nebraska, if something were to happen, if he were to flip, Nebraska's, they have options in place. They are well prepared for this. But if he stays, they're going to be they're going to be very happy to work with that. I would say that ball of clay they have to work with there because there's a lot in there. It's just about getting it out and making sure, you're keeping him accountable and making sure he's giving consistent effort.
He's one of those guys that comes up all the time, especially locally, that a lot of people don't seem to agree on. But let me ask you something, and it's not in his defense, but I'm trying to look at this topically from an evaluation standpoint. What do you make, or how do you think coaches or talent evaluators look at when somebody already has something in place? Do you critique them differently along the way, right? If I'm committed as a sophomore from a maturation standpoint, I'm 15, 16 years old. In essence, it's not I've made my money, but I've made my money, right? Then I have my junior year. Am I still working as hard as my senior year? Am I still pot committed? Do you think that's unique to higher end talent where once they know the eval's already been made, that they continue to still grow emotionally and work at the task at hand? Is that realistic for you?
All right, can you frame explain what you're
like? If I'm 16 and a school wants me, how realistic do you think it is that I continue that I'm elevating my play as a junior and as a senior, and you see that all the time on tape at my age? Like how real?
It's a risk. I mean, I think that's part of the reason you see so many of these schools avoid these early commitments and some of that, because you do sometimes see this complacency. So oftentimes when you do take a commitment early from a guy, it typically, you have to know that guy's hardwired in Nebraska with Trey Taylor. You take that commitment before he even goes into his junior season because you know that guy's going to be putting in the work. You know that guy's, working on, and I mean, Trey's a good example of this. When he committed, he was a top quarterback in the country, but there were plenty of questions about his game, him being able to prove himself as a junior and all of that. And he's continued to progress. He's continued to grow and develop. I think Braylon's another great example of this. Braylon was committed. Braylon was good. He had his spot claimed and all of that, and he could have stood pat on that. But he has elevated his stock. He's elevated his game, and now he's in a point where, kind of going into his senior, he's completely changed his own evaluation. What I thought about him as a junior is not what I think about him going into his senior year, just based on what he's done to his body and what he's. Yeah, Warren.
I completely agree.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. He's completely changed his game. He didn't have to do that. He's committed to Missouri. He's an SEC commit. He could have just stood pat on that.
So Ravi asked me something. Can I share?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was off air, right?
Yeah, because we've had discussions about Braylon quite a bit.
Right. And his progress. And he said, hey, what kind of version of Braylon do you think we're getting this year versus what we saw last year in some of those big moments? And I told him, I said, there's two things that I'm super impressed by. Number one, his work ethic behind the scenes. Like he hadn't really shown that up until this point, but he is young for his age, right? So he's part of the reason I asked the question of, when you have something in the bank, how rare or expected, or do we assume that young person continues to work at their craft? Because it's not lock stock, but for him in particular, and I've been hard on him. There's no question. He'll tell you I've been hard on him. What he's done with his body, what he's done in the weight room, how he says very little about the attention that's going on around him. I told Ravi, I said, it's pretty impressive.
Because I'll ask what the question
he
was.
looks fantastic. He's strong. He's a good lifter. He works constantly. Like I'm not going to say come around, but I can almost with 100% certainty say, you know what? He's not going to need a babysitter. That's always what I look for with high, because he's an elite talent, arm talent, right? Like close to elite. He does throw a great spiral. Big arm. Throws a great, but I do like what he's done behind the scenes, even though he's been a Missouri commit forever. Because I'm just telling you guys, and we use Pittman a ton. That's hard for young people to manage.
Sure.
Yeah. No doubt.
I'm so sure it's what we'll say from my vantage point is, well, if we'll make these assumptions that if you don't bark as a pup, you won't bite as a dog. And that's a line from me. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's not true. But what I'm saying is to stay on the grind at that age when something's already happening is not as common as sometimes we talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and the more I'm thinking about this, at least anecdotally, what's interesting? I don't know if it's the early commitments necessarily, like the guys that commit sophomore year or early on that get complacent, because oftentimes those guys are typically wired a little differently. Like if you're making that early commitment, the school is comfortable taking that early commitment, there's typically an understanding on both sides that, hey, you're going to keep putting in the work. But you do see it with guys that collect a ton of offers super early on and then think they've made it, where it's like, okay, hey, like I collect a ton of offers as a sophomore. And then it's like, okay, yeah, look, I'm still producing. I'm still going out there and putting out good tape. But how dedicated am I to my own development? And, for me, it's something where I think back on retrospect, I was around Harold Perkins at a very young age. I was around Harold Perkins coming out of his freshman year in his sophomore year before he had a whole lot of offers. And I remember what that looked like then and just being like wowed of like, oh, wow, look at that. Like, what a phenomenal athlete. Like, just one of those, like, okay, this is clearly one of the best athletes I've seen. And I watched him dominate high school for 2 more years. But he never really committed himself to, he was a very good high school football player. Cy Park, the high school he played at, has not won a football game since he graduated. That's how good he was. That just the level of talent he was playing with. But he never dedicated himself to reading things like a linebacker in the box. At the high school level, he could get away with kind of playing C-ball, get ball. He could rush the passer. He could do some of that stuff because he's such a phenomenal athlete. Never really dedicated himself to that. Now you're seeing how it's going. The LSU career, he had to move around a little bit. It never really went the way, probably people wanted it to go. And he didn't get picked maybe as high as people expected coming out of high school and certainly after his first year of college, just because he's moved around so many different positions. So the eval, his eval was one where you love the athlete, and I'm getting some shit in the chat from GBR Captain on saying eval. Look, like talk to any coach. That's how they say. Like they say, they don't say evaluate. They all say eval. Like this is just I'm around. Like this is my world. This is the world I live in. I say eval. Like that is just how it goes.
No, it's just because you and I are too lazy to say evaluation, Tim. But that was the point we wanted to make.
This is but like, yeah, like I don't remember the last time I've said. I say evaluators. I talk about evaluators. I don't say the world evaluation.
I'm telling you, you've been sensational for 2 years. I wouldn't give it. You're good. Like
I love a good eval, Tim. It's my favorite. Evals are the best.
Golly, man. We just let guys win when we do that. That's the whole goal. Anywho, so with how they close out June, started with the first weekend, right? We talked about D-line, almost to a man. And I think this is fascinating. And I'm asking you because you were the first person I started this conversation with. Defensive line evaluations, the size, what they're looking for, how can we get an idea of what Corey Brown and Roy Manning are after? And so we took kind of these dives and you did all this homework. It's amazing how I think almost to a person, we think these couple of guys in Mbadi and Demontagnac, Demontac. Yes.
We'll get there. It's fine. Errol
may be better than the actual evaluations that we've had so far in terms of rankings. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Oh yeah, I mean this is a group where I'm going to be hammering all of these. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be hammering all these guys with the rivals evaluators this fall. Like I'm telling you that much. Like Errol's one for me. And he goes by Trey. It's just going to get confusing, so I'm just going to keep calling him Errol because it gets confusing if we have too many Treys in this cycle, in this class. But for Errol, he's one where look, he's playing legit competition down there in Florida, moving all over the line in that frame and having the production he has. I don't know why the ranking is what it is. Like 30 tackles for loss, 14 sacks at that size from the interior of the line. Like those are the statistics you look for. When you're looking at when you're checking boxes on the production standpoint, those are the boxes you're checking. That's what you're looking for. With the Mbadi, I'll say this. I thought the tape is better than the production. I think the tape is one of those things where I look at it, I'm like, okay, I know what we're working with here, and I'm going to have a piece on him this weekend. We spoke for a long time this week, and I'm still just getting around to breaking all that down and writing it up. But he's really excited about Corey Brown. Spoke at length about Corey Brown and his development and just the confidence in his ability to develop. It's interesting. He plays attack react at high school, and so he's like, it is going to be a seamless transition for me just working into Nebraska. They see him as a 3 tech. He's right around 285 pounds, and I saw some comments again yesterday. Which look, I get it. It's high school, and there's a need around here for 300+ pounders. These guys don't come to campus 300 pounds. You add the weight, and Nebraska told these guys too. I talked to Matt Erickson yesterday. Nebraska told him he's right around 310 right now. Nebraska told him to come in right in that 300 to 310 pound range. They'll do the rest of the heavy lifting, and they do the rest of the work to put the weight on his frame and fill out the rest of his frame when he gets on campus. So Errol right around 290, he's going to get on campus. Nebraska's going to get him up to 310, 315 range, I would imagine. With Ombadi, it's been communicated he's 285, probably going to come into Lincoln around that. They want to get him up to 300 pounds, and so all of these, and Travers too, he's 285 pounds right now and holding that well. I think he can potentially get up to 300 pounds. So just in general, I think this is a group that has good growth potential, but also comes in with a relatively high floor in terms of what they've done and what they're going to be able to do. This is exactly, I understand you want the 320 pounders. I understand you want all of that, but these are the guys when they brought in Corey Brown, when we talked about getting bigger on the D line, it's not necessarily just about getting the 6'6", 320 pounders. It's about getting the guys that are disruptive and use their mass effectively. I think Ombadi does a good job of utilizing his mass effectively. DeMontagnac does a good job of utilizing his mass effectively. DB, did you talk to Micah about working with Dylan on Sunday?
Yeah.
So we're watching them do that, just they're working striking, and they're working hand placement. And so they've all got you've got the ball, like one side holding the medicine ball, like basically over their core like this, and you've got all the campers on the other side working in the line, and they're going at it. And you're seeing all these guys in the line, and there's all these different D linemen out there, and they're going up and they're striking, and everyone's getting moved off the ball, or the ones holding the ball, they're getting moved back, or you're seeing their momentum push back a little bit. Even if they don't lose their balance or lose their feet, they're moving backwards a little bit. Micah's working opposite Dylan Berriman. This is my first time getting eyes on Dylan since he's stepped foot at Nebraska.
He's a big kid. He probably needs to come down a little, but he's a big kid.
6'1.5", dense 330 plus, you know what I mean? Dense. And Mike is not a small kid. Mike is 6'2", 300. Mike is a big kid himself. And you can see Mike is not used to this because he's getting up and he's striking. And Dylan, you can see Dylan's not even tense. His lower body's not flexing. He's not anchored down into the ground. Dylan doesn't move. Mm-hmm. It's the hands are striking the ball and coming off immediately, and they're not moving. And then Micah goes again and again, and it's just not happening. So yeah, Dylan's got a lot. It's just a densely built 330 pounds. There's a lot of that. That guy is what, when we talk about a big body on this, that guy is so important to what this program wants to do moving forward and how they can build out this D line moving forward. And I think getting him has given him this flexibility to add these type of pieces this cycle instead of maybe having to go pursue a 310 pounder plus type guy. When you can go get a DeMontagnac, who's a high floor guy, you can go get a Travers, and then you can take a big swing on a guy like Ombadi.
It's just interesting too, because D-line, I think we're missing the mark. Kamari Copeland is a 290 pounder. Bear Alexander just got to 300 pounds. He's 23 years old. I don't know if we're not understanding how D-line is played anymore, but there are lots of guys that are really good at this. Kamari Copeland is top 7-8 defensive lineman in the country at VT. He's 6'2", 290. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you don't need that. That's the thing. I don't like getting hung up on
there's a lot of guys like that.
I don't like getting hung up on the 300-pound convert, because you look across the country, and especially look at this cycle. Look who Miami's taken along the D line. It's a 6'2", 260 pounder. These are the body types now. It's not about, and again, this is a study. I've had these discussions with different evaluators and scouts. There's been more of a study on, it's not necessarily just about size and pure, it's not size and weight.
Is Justin Scott 300 pounds? Justin Scott might be 300 pounds.
Might be
300 pounds. And he's 6'4". Great.
Byron Murphy at Texas, I don't think ever was truly 300. I don't think Byron was ever 300 at Texas. I think he's 300 now in the league, but I don't think he ever played at 300 at Texas. And one of the more effective interior defensive linemen I've seen in recent memory. He's one of my favorites.
303 is what they have him listed at.
I mean, barely.
Yeah.
And he's 6'4". So it's like,
Yeah, that's quite a bit. I mean, a couple more inches on a lot of these guys. Tim, you mentioned Matt Erickson. I have to ask about him a little bit, not because he goes to Miller North, but I have this thing with taller offensive linemen, right? The guys that get kind of above that 6'6" range, and you're into like 6'8" with Erickson there. How do you like his movement? Because that's always where I get a little bit hesitant on those guys that start to get really, really tall. How do you like Erickson's movement?
I think he's a functional mover generally in space for the most part. I'd say as a lateral mover within this, he's working on his technique. Definitely he's working on staying lower. Definitely working on some of that, working on his footwork. I think that's some of that's still a work in progress, still coming together, but generally very functional mover, I would say, for relative to his size. I think he moves around well in space. They do ask him to lead block and kind of pull and do some of that stuff. So, and he can do some of that stuff. It's just, I think he's still very much learning how to stay low at that size, which can be the toughest thing for a 6'8" guy.
So with Erickson, does he at all seem like, when we talked to Jeep Wade, he talked about guys that are athletic and can move. Like, does he seem a little bit like an outlier at all to you, or do you think he fits in that same mold as some of these other guys that Wade has recruited?
I'm trying to think. I think he fits. It's different though. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to be curious what it looks like in the lab. It's one of those because the thing with Jeep too is just the tackle experience really isn't there like it is. He's going to have to get it here. I would say not as notable as it is. Since he's gotten here, and so that's something where he's more known for his interior stuff. And so it's one of those, I think for me at least, it's wait and see.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese.
Absolutely
Inside
fantastic.
Nebraska. Great stuff there. We appreciate it as always, Tim.
Not a bad 40 minutes there, TV.
Hey, not bad at all. Not bad. So have a good weekend, guys.
You got it.
Imagine how long it would have taken if we would have said evaluations every time.
You guys.
That's Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska.
Make this the summer event at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. Lease the 2026 Jeep Wrangler Sport S starting at $289 a month. Built for the road and ready for summer. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn starting at $399 a month, or finance at 2.9% APR for 72 months. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point.
It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Chevrolet. Lease the 2026 Chevy Trax LT for just $349 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. 2 great Chevys, 1 big June event. Slide into a 2026 Chevy Equinox LT for just $399 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. Get to Edwards Chevrolet today. Together, let's drive.
Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, how we doing?
Hey, good morning. How we doing, guys?
Doing good. It's good to see you again, Tim. I can't wait to see you for, I guess it'll technically be a third time in 2 days here when we get to each other at 7-on-7 again.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be back out there. I'll be heading back out there here shortly.
So I want to start with the non-Nebraska commit guys, at least guys that are still either uncommitted or maybe committed to other places. And since DB's not here, I feel like we have a little sneak opportunity to talk about Micah for a second. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So Micah's super interesting. Obviously, you know, I know DB's been taking him out to camps and stuff. About to head into his junior year. Obviously, he's gotten a little bit bigger, bulked up a little bit. What is your take on where he's at, even from where you saw him last fall until now?
Yeah, the growth's obviously like something that, you know, the physical growth is there. And that's something where he looks completely different than he did in the fall, where like in the fall, I was like, okay, well, he's doing some good things out there, some flashes, whatever, but I need to see him grow. And now he's grown, you know, and he's grown to the point where, you know, you don't really need to squint to see it. You don't need to be like, I wish he was a couple inches taller to see it at the next level. Like, you can see it now. You can see it. And so that helps. But two, I think he's really come along from a technical standpoint. I think, you know, I didn't get to see him yesterday. I'm excited to see him today, but I did see him at the Nebraska camp a couple of weeks ago. And I think, again, like his ball skills, the way he triggers on the ball, I think he does just a lot that translates to the next level right now. But excited to see him in action today.
Yeah, the thing that I think I liked the most I saw from the fall and then again yesterday is that triggering on the ball, like breaking on the ball when it's in the air. He does a really good job of that. Need him to turn a few more of those PBUs into interceptions than he did last year. The sophomore, we'll give him a little grace there. But I was really impressed with that part of his game last year. And then we got to see him. I'll be interested to see when you see him today because he played quite a bit of offense yesterday as well. So I'll be interested to see. You talked about those ball skills there. I'll be interested to see what you think of him once you see him play a little offense as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I thought I was pleasantly surprised. I think seeing him moving around at camp, just how naturally naturally he catches the ball. Like that is something where he has it in his game. So, excited to see him today.
Tim, I'm curious. I stood next to you a couple of different times, and I didn't want to pick your brain the entire time because I knew you were recording as well. So I didn't want to, get both of our voices in half of your action shots. But I was curious about how you evaluate when you're watching the 7-on-7, because obviously not in pads, kids are going to move a little bit differently, and maybe they make some different types of decisions, especially quarterbacks. Maybe they can see it a little bit better when it's without the pads, without the lines in front of them and whatnot. But when you're breaking down, especially those skill positions, slot receivers, safeties, corners, what are you watching for at 7-on-7 comparative to what you watch for on tape when you get their game film?
Yeah, so I think with 7-on-7, one thing for me on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's a really good opportunity to see how some guys work through traffic, how they work through a lot of different noise, especially where when you see a team that is playing more zone. I mean, you do see a lot of teams play man and 7-on, but you do see teams that play zone, especially those type of teams. I would say those teams, you really get to see how these DBs match, work in traffic. And then for receivers, I mean, really like, for me personally, I think if you take 7-on-7 seriously as a receiver, I've seen what it does to your game in terms of route running, nuance, timing, understanding windows, understanding. I would say again in a 7-on-7 setting, how to climb routes, how to find spacing, and that stuff all translates to the next level. Again, you're working on a much tighter space and you're working against, 5 other receivers versus on the field, it's 4 other weapons, out there, or pass catches out there. So, there's a lot of touches to go around. And so for that reason, I think too, I think a lot of receivers, for me at least, I'm watching a lot with receivers is how they move, how they break. I think, the opportunities just to get reps more than anything. Wide receivers on DBs, those one-on-one reps, like there's nothing better for those two positions than just repping against each other. For cornerbacks, it's truly, I mean, like I've seen, Leonard Moore is the talk of college football right now going into his junior season here at Notre Dame. He's a 3-star coming out of Round Rock, but we saw him a ton on the 7-on-7 circuit playing up against top national competition. That got him better. That has him in the position where he's in now, where, he was a guy who, was playing on a national 7-on-7 team. But was primarily, again, a 3-star, relatively underrated. You had all these other different stars out there, but he was drawing the big matchups and he was taking them. And he'd just use the opportunity to get better. And so I think if you take it seriously at the skill positions, it really helps you, I think, understand, because football's a movement sport. It's a stop-start sport. And to understand spacing, to understand timing, to understand a lot of those different things, the nuances, I would say, to playing both wide receiver and DB, I think a lot of that can be developed and picked up through 7-on-7.
So I want to talk about both wide receiver and DB here for a second, because there's a guy that's in Nebraska's class that we typically think of as a defender, but is technically listed as an athlete on multiple recruiting services, and that's Torrey Pittman, who we saw play a lot of receiver yesterday, which we didn't see from him do a ton at Central. But one of the things I was really impressed with, I was really impressed with his route running. Especially down by the goal line, where it's pretty challenging to get open down by the goal line in 7-on-7. Like that's a pretty condensed area, as it is, I guess, in all forms of football. But also had some really good ball skills on the offensive side. Like, do you think there's any chance that he is like truly an athlete and his position's up in the air, or like this guy's a defensive back?
He's a defensive back, in my opinion. But I mean, that said, like look, I mean, and it's what we've talked about with him for so long. It's, from a candidate standpoint, he's a tremendous athlete. I mean, yesterday he was the best athlete on the field. Like, it felt like that, and we haven't really seen him perform to that level enough when we know he's capable of that. He's one of the best. I thought yesterday was really encouraging to see a guy who we all know and have seen it. Again, it's verified out there. He's done track, he's jumped, he's done all of that. Like, the verified athleticism is out there. So we know he's an elite athlete. We always haven't necessarily seen it translate on the field. Yesterday we saw it translate, I thought. And again, it's for him. You could still see on the defensive side of the ball, he's still kind of figuring some things out from a technical standpoint. But you like to see the dedication to the technical prowess. And then offensively, I mean, I think it's just a testament to the athlete that he is, that, look, he gets open easy. I mean, he's so sudden in and out of breaks. I think he's someone who, I had a video of him kind of just like streaking open down the seam for a touchdown. And look, yeah, that's a coverage bust, but it's also like, look, you're also not banking on that guy picking up that much ground as fast as he did. You're not banking on losing the leverage where you did, where, you're trying to stay on top of him and you just can't, because he picks with the leverage so fast. He's a tremendous athlete. And I was really encouraged to see the way he performed yesterday, how feisty he was, how competitive he was. Like, again, I think for him, something he doesn't get talked about enough, just because we don't see it enough, is his ball skills. Like, I think when he gets opportunities to make plays on the balls, he can make them. And I think he does. Like, he's a jumper. We know that he can go up in the air. He can high point the ball. We know he can make, kind of unique plays, just off the strength of his athleticism. But I thought yesterday was an encouraging display of, okay, like I am the best athlete on the field. I'm going to start performing like it.
Tim, where, and maybe it's Torrey, but is there somebody else that maybe from the first time or the last time that you had seen them in person, whether it was in a game, practice, 7-on-7, whether it was a camp, whatever the case may be, that had maybe improved themselves significantly from that first viewing to where they are now, to where you saw yesterday?
Torrey's the first one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there was anybody else that really caught the attention like that. I know I talked about it with a few of you guys yesterday, but like 2028 Lincoln Northeast DB Jarvis Lott's a guy I'm really intrigued by. Has a tremendous frame, technically sound. I like watching him move around. And again, I thought he had a good sophomore year, but getting to see him in person, I think he's filled out into his frame a little better. I think he's moving around a little better. Want to see a little more from him as a junior, but I thought we saw some encouraging steps forward this time around.
What did you think about this is a guy that is super young and had gotten some attention for early offers. What did you think about Achille Heath Moody from Miller North?
Oh, I'm shocked at Miller North question. No, who would have thought?
No, it's my second time seeing.
A little bit.
Yeah, second time seeing him in just around a week. I was at Miller North last week to see him in practice. Saw him again yesterday. And look, I mean, he was an eye catcher last week, just moving around in practice, and then getting to see him yesterday actually do some like competitive, 7-on-7 stuff was really cool. I think a receiver for me, did not expect the suddenness. He's very explosive off the line of scrimmage. I think does a good job creating separation in and out of breaks. Very, very sudden, I would say. And that's like, again, it's a football. Football is a stop-start sport. It is a sport where you need to be sudden in. I think for him overall, he checks a lot of the boxes in terms of what the frame looks like and the overall movement ability. Even if like long term he's a DB and we primarily see him move at receiver right now.
Tim, I know you've had plenty of time to evaluate Trey, to share your thoughts about him and everything, but did you enjoy your unique experience of watching the local media see Trey in person for the first time?
Yeah, that was cool. It was cool, but it was cool to see him. I mean, I'm excited about. I will say this too. Again, I've seen him a good bit on the 7-on-7 circuit now. Working last summer with Raw. Of course, he plays with 24K on the actual 7-on-7 circuit. And I think you can clearly tell the chemistry still developing with his Miller South teammates, especially some of those guys. That it's clear. It's like there were a few throws yesterday where there was one I pointed out where maybe I'll post it, maybe I won't. I mean, he makes enough throws where it's like it's not necessary, but it's essentially a wheel route, and he hits it, and the receiver goes up to try and high point the ball. And I was watching that back yesterday, and it's like if the receiver just kept running, that's pin. I mean, one, the throw is on the money when the receiver goes up to go get it, he just drops the ball. But two, if the receiver just kept running instead of stopping to go turn around and jump and try and high point the ball hits him in stride. The ball hits him in stride. So it's some of that stuff where the chemistry is very much still developing with this team, but you can see that one, the chemistry is developing, and two, I think you already see just yesterday. I mean, the consistent velocity he gets on the ball. That's something that I've talked about with him forever, and I thought you saw that all day yesterday. I think you're going to see it all day again today. And it's not just pushing the ball downfield, it's sideline to sideline. An aspect of his game, I think he's really improved upon. I would say from his junior season to this point, is his ability to layer throws. I think he's doing a better job of that, and I think he's being a lot more intentional about layering throws. I thought we had a few throws. There was one to the corner of the end zone in particular, I remember, where it just kind of soars right over a DB, or just kind of just like goes right over a defensive back into the receiver's hands. And I thought he's done a good job of adding that aspect to his game, because he could throw with touch, he could throw with precision. I think he does a good job throwing, obviously with consistent velocity and accuracy. But being able to layer throws was an area from the throwing the football part of his game that I wanted to see a little bit more of, and we've seen that.
So if I'm not mistaken, you didn't get a chance to see Braylon yesterday, correct?
No, I did not. I'm excited to see him today.
So what are the things you're going to be looking for from Braylon today that you're like, okay, we saw this last year. Here are the things that I would like to see to know that he's making the progress that I want him to for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I want to see quick reads and quick progressions and getting the ball out. I want to see from him. I want to see, I would say, a lot more across the middle, maybe to the intermediate of the field. We know he's got a good deep ball. We know he's good underneath. Maybe want to see a little bit more of him at that second level, those intermediate type throws against the sideline, stuff like that. He's got a couple new weapons this year, so I'm intrigued to see how he works with those guys here this fall. But besides that, and I think for me, more than anything, it's that processing. It's being able to work through those progressions fast and getting to those throws. being able to, I would say, create when maybe his first read isn't there. I just want to see how he's processing and how he's seeing things right now. I think that's the important thing for me. I probably won't be recording, but like I did yesterday with Trey, for me, the most informative way to watch quarterbacks in 7-on-7 is getting them from behind, because I like to see what they're looking at, and I like to see, from behind what those throws are looking like, because I think that's where you really get a good idea of accuracy and timing. I learned that watching Dante Moore, and it's kind of been a thing I try to do with quarterbacks since.
Tim, as you get ready for your evaluation of Saturday for Battle of the Boneyard, we talked about some of these guys already just with the NEB Prep 7v7 championship, but are there guys that you are really putting your thumb down on that you really want to see? Maybe you haven't seen for the first time. You're excited that they're in Lincoln?
Yeah, it's a good group of 28s in town. I'm really excited about the group that's heading to town. 24K, that's a team that Trey Taylor has played with for the last few years. He's not going to be able to play this weekend because he's going to be on his OV. There's compliance issues, but the number one quarterback in the 2028 cycle, Christopher Verghese, is going to be leading 24K at quarterback. He's going to be joined by Lorenzo McMullen Jr., the number 6 receiver in the country, Jalil Goli, an elite cornerback in the 2028 cycle, Keaton Fields, who's already visited Nebraska and is the number 3 corner in the country. He already visited. He was on campus for the spring game back in March. And then you also have Jalen Hill, the 4-star cornerback commit, going to be back on campus competing with Team TOA. He's not on an OV, so he's going to be allowed to compete this weekend. Midwest Boom, I'm really excited about this. Not Nebraska related at all. Midwest Boom is bringing out Israel Abrams, the Miami quarterback commit, down this weekend. He's going to be competing with Midwest Boom. And look, man, I saw Izzy a couple weeks ago at OT7 Dallas, or a couple months ago at this point back in April, OT7 Dallas. It wasn't his best showing. He's had better showings on the 7-on-7 circuit since. I'm looking forward to seeing him just seeing him again. He's had I think he's improved over these last few months since I last saw him. So I'm excited to see the growth he's made to his game. And then NPA out of Tennessee, bringing in some top talent out of there. Maximus Curry is a 4-star receiver in the 2028 cycle. Jermaine Cobbins is one of the top corners in the 2028 cycle. Braylon Bedford is a top 60 prospect in the 28 cycle, one of the top safeties in the country. Jordan Hicks is a safety the staff really likes out of Mission Viejo out in California. He's already a blue chip prospect, a 4-star prospect the staff has an offer out to. And then Fast Houston going to be on campus for the first time. They're one that didn't compete last year, but going to be competing this year. A couple of names to watch with them. Carter St. Junius is a 2028 receiver that's pretty highly ranked out of Manville, Texas, down in Alvin. And then Laporte, 4-star wide receiver Peyton Smith. Nebraska was actually the first to offer Peyton Smith. Now he's the number 11 receiver in the country, I believe. Number 11 receiver in the country, yes, in the 2028 cycle. Nebraska was the first to offer. They've been in touch, through his coaching staff since. Jamar Mosey's been down to visit him multiple times. He's yet to visit Nebraska. Nebraska has a chance when he gets to campus this weekend to make a big early move with him.
Tim, you mentioned, I'm glad you brought up Nebraska being the first offer there on a guy that ends up being a 4-star, because we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, obviously, with what you do when you evaluate guys, whether they end up coming to Nebraska or being Nebraska targets or not. But how often or how well has Nebraska done, in your opinion, on getting in on guys early? Because that was kind of a narrative a couple years ago with Rule, is they'd offer guys early. It would seem like a flyer, and then somebody big offers, and they're like, oh, what a great eval. Has Nebraska continued to do that, in your opinion? Are they doing a good job of offering guys before a lot of the steam picks up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I still think you're seeing a good, and I would say an encouraging pattern from an evaluation standpoint. I think it's important. Running backs coach Ian Bartel was on a podcast recently, and I think he did a good job there of talking about it too. But of separate evaluation and recruiting. You can be a really good evaluator. You can be a really good evaluating staff. Be good at recruiting. I think the staff is still, I think, evolving, I think, as a recruiting staff, but from an evaluation standpoint, I think they do a good job. And I still think they do. I mean, you look at this 2027 cycle, just the class where we're sitting at right now. they were early on David Fuller-Runcho, who now an elite player, committed to Notre Dame, one of the top defensive linemen in the country. They were early to offer David Fuller-Runcho. At linebacker, Jordan Nelson, who is now happily committed to Texas Tech, the number 4 linebacker in the consensus. Nebraska offered him when he had 0 stars. Nebraska and Texas Tech were right in there pretty early on. They were early on Prince Goldsby, now Ohio State linebacker commit. And so I think overall, Kobe Rhymes, they were early on. Blake Benton, they were relatively early on, even if that recruitment picked up in a hurry, I think they were early on Brandon Lockley Jr. And so, you have your mix of guys they circle back on, I think. Guys they, maybe didn't see the first time around. Tate Wallace is one in Iowa where it's like, well, why did they wait so long to offer? And then they finally offered, in the spring. That's one where it's like, okay, what happened there? But for the most part, I think across the positions, across the different position groups, you look at what Nebraska's done, and where they stand. I think I'm generally encouraged by how they've evaluated, what they've looked for, and I think even more so too. I think the fact that it's a lot of these guys who, when Rob Orich took over, when Corey Brown joined the staff, when Tyler Yell joined the staff, like these new offers that these new assistants made, Jeep Wade too, these new offers that these new assistants made when they joined the staff, these guys ended up being like 4-star prospects once the rankings started shuffling out. They were just early on some guys that maybe they emailed at their previous stop, maybe they got to Nebraska and turned the tape on, were trying to find sleepers and found this guy that, at the time had 0 offers or 0 stars. But I think they've done a really good job, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, of staying early and evaling well. Offensive line, I think they're doing a good job as well early on of evaling early, getting in on guys. I think 28, you're starting to see that with some of the names that are popping up for them along the offensive line. They were early on some guys there, even prior to Jeep Wade getting on staff, and I think that's going to benefit them as they get deeper into that cycle.
You made a distinction, which I think is a good one, between evaluation and recruiting. How do you think this iteration of Matt Rhule's staff I'll throw Addison Williams in there. I know he wasn't added this offseason, but that's a guy that obviously is a high-level recruiter. You mentioned Jeep Wade, Corey Brown, Tyler Yelk, Rob Orich. How do you feel like this iteration of the staff is as a recruiting staff, if we do like their evals, as a recruiting staff, as opposed to maybe last year or the year before?
It's better for sure than I think last year's staff. I think they are for sure a step forward, just off the strength of having a young, energetic defensive coordinator who you talk to guys on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we've gotten multiple at this point. And my own body spoken highly of him. Mato Mo spoken highly. Eli Harris. All these guys who visit. I mean, Jalen Hill spoke highly of him. Bryce Williams. All these guys talk about they come to Nebraska. They already feel maybe good about Nebraska. But this spring, what's been really encouraging and insightful for them has been they sit down with Rob Orich, Nebraska's new defensive coordinator, and he's got a plan for them. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what visit it is. It's like, for Jalen Hill, for example, I mean, he visited back in March, and at the time, it was still kind of Nebraska was still figuring out, okay, do we want to take this guy? Do we how do we feel about the DB board? But Rob Orich sat down with him and laid out a plan of just here's what we want over the next 2 years, year one, what this would maybe look like for you, year two, stepping forward, and here's what you will look like in the defense, and cut film up of what it might look like next to a former player within the defense. He's done a good job. I mean, Ombadi was telling me that, just sitting with Rob Orich, and then he just draw up a new play from scratch on the whiteboard, and then ask them, and they talk it through together of where Ombadi would fit into it. And I think just his understanding of the game, knowing that it's his system and he knows he owns the system, I think just off the strength of that, Nebraska's gotten a boost on the defensive side of the ball, and it clearly shows. I mean, look what they've done on the defensive line here this cycle. But I think too, Corey Brown, the relationships he's building. Again, we're early. We're very, very early in the 2028 cycle, but I've been doing some early outreach with some of these 2028 D linemen. And it's been a thing pretty much from the jump of hey, I'm in touch with Corey Brown. I had a D lineman hit me up last night who said, hey, just a heads up. I know we haven't texted. I texted him on Tuesday just to see if Nebraska had been in touch. And he said, hey, I know we haven't been in touch since Tuesday. I just wanted to let you know Nebraska's been in touch every single day. Corey Brown's been in touch every single day. And we're talking about 4 or 5-star D linemen here in the 2028 cycle. He's not really backing down from any fights. He's got some strong relationships here. You look ahead to 2028. Kellen Hall is the number 1 D lineman in the 28 cycle out of Louisville. And he's been texting. I was texting with him. He's yet to visit Nebraska, considering a visit in the fall, but he's known Corey Brown because Corey Brown's been recruiting him since he was at Miami of Ohio. Again, it tells you a little bit about Corey Brown, that he's going up to a guy who, even at a year ago at this point, was clearly a blue chip type prospect in the 28 cycle, and saying, hey, I'm with Miami of Ohio. I want to make my best case to you. He doesn't really back down from any of these recruitments. And I think that'll help Nebraska. So, yeah, I mean, defensively, I think they've taken a step forward. Offensively, Jeep Wade, you've seen a solid boost off there. EJ Bartel, I think, is an established recruiter who, he's done good work. He knows what he's looking for, and he knows who he wants. I think per cycle, I think he's just been given kind of the keys to do what he wants with his position group. We're still kind of in wait and see mode with Tequila Shorts, who's had some nice wins, but I think has an opportunity this coming weekend with Khalil Taylor to really pick up a big win over Penn State. So Tequila's one of those, I think we're in wait and see mode. I think he's done a good job overall, but yeah, I mean, relatively doesn't have like a true 4-star win on the high school level just yet, but has a chance to pick that up this weekend. We're coming out of the weekend, I would say, with Khalil Taylor, who won't announce till July 6th, but Nebraska has a chance to make a big move in that recruitment with his OV this weekend.
Don't forget, make sure you give our friends over at Next Gen Male Medical a call, 402-614-9700. Their expertise, their bread and butter is hormone replacement therapy for both men and women, but they're experts in so much more than that as well. Whether it's peptides, GLP-1s for weight loss, vitamins, hydration, they've got you covered no matter what you need to get you feeling your best. I've been on the GLP-1s for weight loss. I'm down almost 50 pounds total, and I feel great. And they're experts. Like I said, they paired it with the tesamorelin for me as well to increase a little bit of that fat loss and help out with my recovery and retaining muscle as well. If you have heard about GLP-1s, you know retaining muscle is a huge part of that. They can help you out with that part of the equation as well. It's 402-614-9700. Tell them DB and I sent you, and you'll get a free vitamin shot with your order as well.
How hard was it for you, TV, to work the schedule with all the, because I tell these guys what Nebraska pulled off is bigger, in my opinion, than just, hey, Battle of the Boneyard, right? It was the OV weekend. It was the Battle of the Boneyards. It was the reveal. They had to navigate the weather. They had all the preseason ticket sales. Like, coaches are sporadically having, you either got to be at Firethorn or there's dinner at Capitol, but then there's guys you want to watch. Like, I felt like it's a stressful weekend, but it's got to be well worth it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I would say not even the weeks, it's the months leading up to June 20th and the time that went into this. I mean, props to everybody in that building for this weekend went off, I would say, generally, all things considered, without a hitch. I thought things went well on Saturday. I thought, OV weekend, things went well. I mean, and I mean, we saw it on Saturday too. It was good to see the coaches kind of hanging around, some of the commits hanging around. But for me, I thought, like you mentioned, to be able to navigate that kind of on a whim of, okay, weather's rolling in, we got to move indoors. Oh, we're fine, we're good. And I mean, I talked to coaches all day, and they were. One, I mean, the first thing they said when I was talking to them was, for the guys that had never been to Nebraska, they talked about the facilities, but all day they were pretty impressed with how Nebraska adjusted and made things work. And just about every team there would like to come back. And that's encouraging. That's positive. I mean, you had some of the top teams in the country in town. It was really good to see all of that competition, see them bring their best, those guys compete. That was really cool. And then, like I said, I think the biggest thing for me coming out of the weekend, this 27 class, man, they have some camaraderie. It was really cool to see them really start to gel together.
Let me back up before I let Ravi and everybody else get all hot and heavy in the Battle of the Boneyard and the actual recruiting weekend. I want to go back to the state 7-on-7. This is the second or third year that you actually are like a boots on the ground, put eyes on this thing, like you're all over the place watching. has the floor raised in your opinion, or just tell me or walk me through what you're seeing in terms of overall talent level since you've been watching this?
Yeah, I mean, the first year I came, I mean, when I first got back here, I mean, I told Steve this when I stopped by Warren Academy. I said, "Man, this thing is you have a lot more people here than you did when I was in college, and like when I used to pop through the facility in college." So I think the floor in general, in terms of athleticism around the state, has improved since I was in college, at least. But I think over these last few years, I mean, of course, you have your power programs. You're going to see this fluctuation in talent. But we talked about it. I think as an overall team, I think Westside's going to be the strongest team this year as a overall unit compared to anybody else. But no, I like you mentioned. I think if the floor is raised. For me, what was fun to watch was just all these different guys in the 27 and 28 class who I'm like, okay, well, I have an idea of who this guy is, but I want to see a little, like, what are you doing here? Like, Miller North. No one talks about Sean Hall. It's a good football player, right? I mean, that's a guy who can he can play football somewhere. I thought Sean was really impressive in the 28 cycle. Isaiah Bolin, I thought had, for me, I think
He's a good player.
yeah, it was encouraging to see him across 3 days. I think there's something with him, where there's still something in there where it's like, hey, I want to see a little more. As a junior, I want to see a little more moving forward. It was encouraging to see him. Jarvis Lott was encouraging to see him. I'm blanking on it off the top of my head. Bennington had a corner, first name Baylor, I forget his last name, but I thought he had a really encouraging performance across the 2 days I saw, and that for me is the best. Is the best is getting to see these guys compete against each other, and then getting an idea of who they are, where they kind of stack in. For me, like I've seen Liebentritt before, but I haven't seen him in this up close and get this much time around him. Minnesota's got a good one there, man. That's a good athlete.
Yeah, he's sensational. I've watched him since he was a pup. Coached his brother when he was a kid. He is outstanding. He's long. He runs like he doesn't have bones in his body. He's very fluid. He's fast. He can high point balls. And I said this before, Tim, and I was talking to Coach Collins about Micah, and I'll let you get to that in a sec, but Minnesota knows what they're doing with guys in the secondary. And I think him saying yes to them early and not really going through the recruiting process, I think is going to really pay dividends for Liebentritt.
Yeah, it's not hard to squint, or you don't have to squint to see what that'll look like in a Minnesota defense. Like I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, I know exactly how this is going to fit in what Minnesota does.
Tim, when you're looking at some guys from the Nebraska portion of the 7-on-7, you mentioned, like from Miller North, Sean over there, that kind of surprised you. Was there anybody that just stuck out? Whether it's maybe not a Power 4 guy or whatever, but you say it like FCS even, you're like, oh man, this guy's a lot better than I realized.
Oh, off the top, I'm trying to think if there was again, blanking on the name, 54 from Miller South, the receiver. He was on the receiving end of a lot for Trey. But he was one that was pleasantly surprised because I just wanted to see what Trey had. Obviously we know Tay Ellis, we know, some of the guys out there at Miller South, but he was one for me that just getting around him, getting to see that chemistry get developed just off the strength of their chemistry and what he can provide. For Trey, I think he's got a chance to see a nice kind of, I think, boost this fall. Just he's a good frame, sure hands. I thought he did enough over the weekend, but yeah, like he's one for me. I thought had a good weekend. I mentioned him before, but Jarvis Lott, another one in 28 cycle. For me on tape, it always felt like I was looking for a little more athleticism, looking for a little more quickness. Getting around him in person, you see the frame, you get to see the technique, and you're like, oh yeah, well we can work with this. I think getting around him, I was like, I was encouraged by the fact that we can work with everything he's got.
What I asked you, I think I don't know if this was, I think it was online or on text. whatever. You can fill in the blanks. walk me through the DBs that you liked, or the offensive guys that you liked in 7-on-7.
Yeah, I talked about.
Again, you can leave the. This is hard for me because I don't. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Whoever you want to talk about. Just do that.
Yeah, but no, I figured we were going to get to it at some point. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was like I said, I wanted to get eyes on Lott. I wanted to get eyes on Bolin. I thought Keeley over at Millard North. I'm really excited about him and what these next few years are going to look like. Again, when you talk about good athletes, how they move in space and stuff like that, I think Keeley does a lot of that stuff well. Mentioned it on here last Friday. I thought Torrey had a good Thursday. He wasn't there on Friday, but I thought Torrey had a good Thursday, all things considered. And I think I don't know. And then I mean we had why am I blanking on who am I trying to think of? We had Liebentritt, talked about him a little bit. But yeah, and this we've been texting about Mike a little bit all off season, but this is my first time around him for a couple of days. Got to see him on Saturday again, as well. The thing with Micah for me, just physical tools wise, I didn't expect. And I think Ravi, we talked about that too. He keeps getting bigger. Like it's weird. It was just one of those things where it was just like, he just doesn't look like he did in the fall. And it's just like, man, the biceps just keep getting bigger. It's like, what are you doing? But that, and then for me, I would say the catch point instincts. Like, I think the sure-handedness is still something that's coming along, but the instincts at the catch point from the safety position, because we saw my corner last year. For me, getting to see him from working from the top down was pretty encouraging.
Make this the summer event at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point. Lease the 2026 Jeep Wrangler Sport S starting at $289 a month. Built for the road and ready for summer. This June, the savings are as big as the season. We've also got the 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn starting at $399 a month, or finance at 2.9% APR for 72 months. Don't miss this pitch. Slide into savings at Edwards Jeep and Ram, Council Bluffs and Village Point.
It's time to slide into savings at Edwards Chevrolet. Lease the 2026 Chevy Trax LT for just $349 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. 2 great Chevys, one big June event. Slide into a 2026 Chevy Equinox LT for just $399 a month. $0 down with your first payment due at signing. Get to Edwards Chevrolet today. Together, let's drive.
Tim, when you're looking at Micah specifically here, obviously we saw him at the Nebraska 7-on-7 event and then at the Battle of the Boneyard. Were you surprised, or I guess what was your takeaway of seeing him? Like, we knew he could play at the Nebraska kind of level against that level of competition. What was your takeaway of seeing him again in the setting at Battle of the Boneyard, where it was, from everything that I heard, was a pretty high level of athletes out there?
Oh, the level of competition at Boneyard this year was elite. I mean, we had multiple elite. We had legit star talent at the receiver and DB group. I mean, we're talking about 2027 5-stars in Dante Wright, who's committed to Miami. Elite 27 corner Juju Johnson, Jalen Hill, the Nebraska commit. And then you work your way down, and 2028, Jermaine Cobbins was out there working with NPA. On the wide receiver side of things, you had Carter St. Junius, you had Bubba Brown for Fast Houston, who were both really good over the weekend. And you had a lot of that, a lot of that. You had, I mean, the number 6 tight end just kind of popped up on a whim on Saturday morning and decided, hey, I'm going to compete and land an offer. So yeah, and I think the thing for me, and DB, I wonder how you feel about this. What was really cool to see across all of this, it didn't matter who Micah's playing. He's got that same energy across the board. Like, we obviously the emotions, emotions in terms of ramping it up, the emotions went up a little bit against Miller South, but in terms of just bringing it, he was consistently bringing it.
Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised how the Domos regional blend, how well they competed. Whether it was, I thought Kingston Moore was outstanding. I thought Cam Berry was outstanding. I thought Tate Jenkins was outstanding. I try not to be biased. I thought Micah showed he belonged. Like that.
Yeah.
Roland was good. I like my tweener from the big guy from Southeast, who dealt us fits for 2 days at Passingly in the 7-on-7 state tournament. Like, for a big guy, I thought he used his frame well. To get down to the 2-point conversion against Midwest Boom, I was encouraged by, they weren't in awe or overwhelmed with elite level talent across the country.
And I'm talking to guys from the event too. That is what Izzy Johnigan mentioned. That a couple of the Nebraska
and they're
guys
all
mentioned
young.
that too.
Like
Right.
he's playing a lot of this year. He's playing a lot of 2028 guys. Like
Right.
next year, they're gonna be way good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I was talking to all of these guys too, and for them, it's. I asked a couple of guys, hey, what did you learn about yourself from this event? And it's just, I can hang with anybody. Like, for Izzy, that was a big thing for him. He's from Kansas City Center, and getting to go compete against some top national competition, go up against, hey, I gotta face a 4-star DB. I don't really get to do that in Kansas City all that often, but I got to do that on a random Saturday in June, and I got to prove that I belonged, and so that was really cool.
Tim, when you're looking at the Nebraska recruiting part of this equation, obviously most of the guys on campus this week were already committed. You got the additional commit from last weekend's class with Barrett Kittrell coming into the class. What did you think it was going to come down to between him and Kuhn in terms of whether or not Nebraska took one, both, who was going to get that spot? Like, how did that process play out?
Nebraska would have taken both, is the read I've gotten. They would have been happy to take both. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're in a spot where, like, and I've had some questions about this too. I mean, you look at DB recruiting as well. Like, look, if it was up to, certain people in the building, they maybe have more DBs in the room. They maybe have more, but we're in a cycle, maybe more alignment. I mean, if you ask Jeep, honestly, he'd probably tell you he'd want 6 or 7 offensive linemen in a cycle. Like, he'd like to really add some depth to that room, but there's only so much to go around. And so this one, at least for Nebraska, I think with Kittrell, with what they already did in the room and what's left, Kittrell's one of those, and I think I put Erickson in this too, but Kittrell's one of those, like, you stash develop. That's a guy in 1 to 2, or I guess 2 to 3 years where, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he's starting. And talked to him a little bit last night. I'll have that story up later today. His projections change. I think that's really important too.
I agree.
He said, he talked to Coach Wade over the weekend on his OV. He's grown a little bit. So now he's a tackle to tackle projection, not a guard to guard projection.
So TV, that was the guy. This is a long time ago when I said, "Hey, we're going to go watch high school basketball." We went to Lincoln Christian and Ashton Greenwood, and they wanted to watch. Coach Wade was out of town, so he sent Coach Rule and Coach Wishin, and not my. He didn't send me. Coach Rule was just like, "Hey, let's just go watch high school basketball." And I was telling these guys yesterday, Kittrell's growth. He looked very lean, and he was kind of not a rim runner because he plays above the rim, but he was very end to end for Ashland.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, God, he's pretty athletic for his size, but he looked smaller. Saturday, when I saw him, I told these guys this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He looked huge. I said, he must be one of those guys whose weight can fluctuate quite a bit. When he wants to come down, he can. And when he's carrying his natural weight, he's a big kid. He's bigger than I thought. I knew he was athletic, but he's definitely bigger than I thought. I'm glad you said his projection has changed.
Yeah, and that for me that was eye-opening as well, because now you look at this class and you look at what they've done, and now you have 2 6'4" kind of tackle type projections in Timmy and Barrett, and both of these guys exceptionally athletic. You look at the tape and they're both athletic enough to play tackle. It's just going to be a question with both of them is the length they have in their frame, and from a wingspan standpoint, from a range, are they can they keep this up at the next level? And that's going to be a wait and see type thing with both of these guys. But I think you're generally encouraged by what Jeep is done with this group. I really like Barrett. I'm excited to see him in the fall. It's going to be one of those things. And offensive linemen are typically like this. We got a little spoiled. Maybe people got a little spoiled in the fact that you have a Jordan Agbanoma type in this class that is kind of a plug and play. But he's going to be a stash to develop. You got to be a little patient. But I think if you trust the development with Kittrell, I there's upside there. There's a lot of upside, untapped upside, I would say, in that frame.
Tim, when you're looking at these linemen and where you're projecting them, how much is it? We talk about tackles and a lot of people talk about height. How much is it for you, height versus length versus athleticism? I imagine there's some sort of sliding scale. Well, if you're 6'6", then your length can be, or your athleticism can be here. But if you're 6'4", your athleticism needs to, how are you looking at that when you're looking at a Kittrell or somebody else trying to figure out, hey, what are their projections positionally?
It's a sliding scale for me, but what's interesting? One of my long-standing theories has been that part of the reason that Saban walked out when he did, and something you're seeing across the sport, is the Saban tree are a little behind it. And they were the ones that kind of set the standard on some of these just evaluation stuff in the modern day. But I think they're a little behind when it comes to offensive line. I mean, you saw the way Alabama recruited offensive line in the 2010s and in the early 2020s, and now you see how that's changed. And I mean, you look at Texas, Texas is one where they have fully been on that same tree. Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach, and their offensive line play has not been what it should be for a program like Texas, and that's the case at a couple programs. And part of the reason is I think the recruiting model at offensive tackle, offensive line in general, is a little bit outdated. You can't get away with the 6'6", 320 plus pounder from IMG with slow feet just because he's a monster of a human being and has looked like that for 3 years, in high school. You used to be able to, you can't get away with that. You need athleticism. And so for me, athleticism is the number one thing I'm looking for now in offensive tackles. I need you to be athletic. And ideally I can pair, a big frame with athleticism, I'm all for it. But for me, I really like Timmy for that reason. Coming out when I was on the Michigan beat, I went out to cover Lee Summit North to go see Caden Green. I left that game, and I've got my notes on it too. I left that game more high on Armand Membu than I was Caden Green, just because Membu's a twitchy Membu's an athlete, and so I look at athleticism. That's the number one thing I look for. I've seen enough big frames that lumber around and can't move and can't get low and don't have the foot drive or the lateral athleticism or lateral agility to truly play tackle. I've seen it. You know, I mean, I'm over the big guys. We have to eventually move inside because they just don't have what it takes to hang at tackle. And so I personally, I look at athleticism first and foremost. And yeah, I mean, of course, there's a baseline. Like you can't be 6'3" and play power forward tackle. Unfortunately, you know, that's just, unless you got exceptional length. Like, you know, I mean, Kennedy Brown is probably going to be one of those guys who could maybe get away with it just because he's got like an 80-inch wing.
So Tim,
The great equalizer.
yeah, that's fair. You know, it's kind of funny because I always have thought about this in the sense of what they're going up against, right? And like, what's the biggest outside, like either like 7'9" or like outside linebacker? Like, what's the biggest guy you're going to face in college at the power forward level? Like 280?
Ooh. Yeah, at edge?
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
top.
280. Yeah, 280, 275, 280 is probably going to be your max. I mean, you're going to get your rare, like, no, I don't even know if you get, I mean, Ohio State's going to have a 290, we'll have a 290 pounder. I think Jason Moore's getting up there.
But that's like the biggest guy you'll face on that, right?
Yeah.
So my question's always kind of been like, okay, so if every offensive lineman basically in the power four is bigger than that, then shouldn't the factor on what makes a good tackle be something else? Like I'm asking the question.
Or
like
you backed him into kind of the ants. Like,
well, I'm asking the question
he's
because like
smart enough. He'll figure.
Yeah, like I genuinely have wondered that because like, okay, like I understand on the inside every once in a while. We're getting away from it too, but like you'll get some 320 pounders and stuff like that. So you need some mass on the interior. I've always understood that. And you know, maybe like a shorter guy that has lower center of gravity. He doesn't have to keep guys away from his body as much with long arms. But on the outs, like if you're on a tackle, so I've always thought like, okay, minimum you're talking about, you've got probably a 20-pound weight advantage on any edge you're going to face if you're an offensive, like a powerful offensive tackle. Like at what point does being 6'7", 6'6", and having a 40 or 50-pound weight advantage actually help you versus I can just stay in front of this guy all the time and I'm already bigger than he is?
So I think like that's part of my point of just like, I don't think we ever needed to get to that. We don't need 330, 340 pound offensive tackles. Like we just don't. You don't need the 40, 50 pound weight advantage, but I do think you need the 20, 30-ish pound weight advantage. Like I think you're moving backwards and you're moving backwards. You're trying to stop a guy in his tracks. Like you need a bit of a weight advantage. But I generally agree just in the sense that that's my general point too. Is like, look, you do get your freaks. You still get your freaks. I mean, Juan Gaston at Georgia right now, he was coming out of high school 6'7", 346 pounds, and it looked exceptional. You know, it's like, oh, that guy can hold 360 maybe at the next level. Like that,
sure.
You still get your rare guys where it's like, okay, that he's still athletic enough to do that. Those guys are rare. They typically end up at Georgia because that's just what Kirby does. But when you look around though, like, yeah, you don't need, and even, you know, asking around, I mean, about Nebraska's plan for some of these guys, you know, they talk to Cottrell. They don't need Cottrell to be a 320 pounder. Like they need him to be 290, 300, 310. Like they need him to be in that range. You know, with Claude Mpuma, I don't think that you need Claude Mpuma to be 330, 3. He's huge. He's huge. And I don't know if you need him to be 3.
Right? Really?
Like you probably don't want him to get too big, right?
Hey, you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even going to preface this by saying I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid because I don't care if I'd rather be right than well liked. So I'm going to keep it a buck. He's extremely athletic. He is tremendous size. Mbanga is not a huge guy. Good size, extremely athletic.
Yes.
Like I look at Erickson, who you mentioned as somebody you can store, athletic, long.
Mhm.
Like, what they're doing, you can see. Defensive line, right? There was a year 3 regression. You can tell they're intentional about what they're after in the recruiting cycles and what's on campus currently. I mean, if you look at Riley Van Poppel, he's doing this deal like he's golfing on TikTok. Look at his frame. Watch Corey Brown teach at those clinics that you and I always talk about in those camps. Like you can see what they're trying to do, and they're on the same page. Spent 30 minutes with Coach Teasley Saturday. He sounds like Coach Wade. They get along well. You've known each other for 15 years, right? Arch, Yelk, Corey Brown, Roy Manning. Familiarity. Like, you know what they're trying to do, because I don't know, man. Like, this is the first time in a minute I can actually see what the end game is supposed to look like.
Yeah, I've had that thought this offseason. I've had that thought shared to me by few people on staff of just like, and they've been other places and they're like, hey, this reminds me of, and truthfully, it's like, hey, like, it just, this feels like we got it right. Like for some guys, they talked about it, reminding them of kind of like year one at like a previous school where it's like, hey, like this is the group. There's a lot of energy, and it's like but they've got something and they're aligned. And there's that alignment. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago in my story, kind of catching up with like agents and parents and stuff like that on Nebraska. There is a feeling of alignment, better alignment from the coaching staff down. You talk about D linemen, Van Poppel's one where I think we're dismissing the importance and the value of 1 year of just being out there thrown into the fire and getting that experience and out playing in a different system by a coach that's going to push him. A coach that's going to kind of light a fire under that, like consistently push him, like not going to let him get. I would say, he's not going to get caught up. And I think part of it too is having the guys around him, like with the effort and the energy that Jasir Whittington just brings, just as a human being, like. You're going to be pushed, just being in, like having to keep that guy at bay or having to make sure you're matching that guy's energy. So between the coaching staff and the guys they've brought in, like there's an energy difference. I also say this too, just being around the program. I haven't noted this, I don't think, anywhere in writing. Tyson Terry looks like Tyson Terry, Terry.
He looks good, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he looks like Tyson Terry 2.0. You know what I mean? Like it's like he just like evolved to another level.
So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I've known him forever, right? I mean, it's a guy that babysat Zoe. When I saw him at Bishop Gorman lifting, when we got off the plane, like they had some guys that were already down. We went right to the facility from the airport, and I looked at him. And it was cool. Like it was him, Gage Stenger. There were some guys that were banged up. Deshaun Singleton was working out, like that were banged up that had gotten a head start. And I kind of watched him, and when I came back, I told Ravi, I was like, man, I said, it's good to see Tyson and those guys lifting. Like he looks sensational. Then spring ball happened, pre-spring ball, like not the game hadn't happened yet. And I go. I said, Tyson's kind of interesting. He seems like he's settling in, but he's still playing catch up. Then he had the good spring game. And I was like, oh, okay. I can start to see this. Then I saw him at the thing at Werner with Austin.
Oh, the neon baseball
the
thing?
neon baseball league.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the dude. Then 3 weeks ago, he's here in Omaha training. It's like Caleb, Christian, Jones, the Rezaks. They go see this. They have a trainer that they like. They're going to run hills. And I was like, is he going to be a huge tight end or is he going to be a 3-tech? Like you could just see his frame. He looks like an upside down ice cream cone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's still like this mean-spirited, tough kid too. I'm like, you can't tell me that these guys aren't developing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, him and then the other one I was going to note in that D line room who I think is getting bigger in a good way. I like where his frame is going is Sua.
Oh yeah.
I like where Sua's frame's going.
How about his change in like the last year and a half? He looks like a different person.
No, yeah, like Steve noted it to me when we first saw him, and he was just like, "Is that Sua? He kind of looks like Umaga." He's like, "Yeah, like that's what he looks like right now because he got the hair like that too right now." But
did he have the skull cap on?
Yes, the skull cap, and he's got the.
Yeah, you made a mistake him. I agree. I agree, man.
Tim, I want to stay on defensive line here for a second. I'm going to take Whittington out of the equation because I think we all assume a certain level of effectiveness from him this year. But I'm going to give you some guys that either didn't play or didn't really play last year, and you tell me which one, if any, or multiple, you think could have a big impact. Like, don't have to call your shot or anything, but just like guys you think like, hey, if a couple more things go right, this could go well. We'll start with Stoudemire, Hofkin. We're skipping Jashir, Malcolm Simpson, Tyson Terry, who we already brought up, Mason Goldman, Sula Fotu, who we brought up, Gabe Moore, who's back, or I'll toss in a guy like last year, Dylan Parrott.
I'll go Simpson.
You can throw Berryman in there too if you want to.
Yeah, I'll go Simpson and I'll go Sua just because I think those two aren't getting talked about right now in terms of what I expect them, like the way we're talking about them now compared to what I expect the conversation around them is going to be in October, November, and the role they're kind of playing in the defense. I'm expecting both of them to be in the rotation. Tyson, like we talked about as well, expecting to be there. And I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring out how I feel about it. I've got a question mark around Stoudemire. I don't know what to expect. And
is it the frame? Because his frame looks so much different than everybody else's.
The frame's a little weird, and it's just from a health standpoint, it's like how much are we going to get from this guy? Like how much are we going to see of him? Can we count on him being a top of the rotation like mainstay, or is it going to be a thing where I wonder about Dylan Parrott because I think Dylan Parrott's got a great frame, and especially in this front, I think he can work in as a shade. Like I think he can work in as a rotational shade. But I wonder, is like, okay, do we have enough from Stoudemire to say, or have we seen enough? Are we going to get enough from Stoudemire this year where Nebraska
I like him
has the veteran leadership at the top of that room? Because I think they need it. I just think there's a question mark around, and I've not been around him to the level that you have, DB. Again, we've only got like one or two practice viewings plus the spring game, which he wasn't super active in.
Who doesn't sit still and is probably going to see everybody. Like I get it, right? You still need.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I need a little more. I need a little more info. He's one of those that I've got a big question mark just because I didn't see enough of.
This dude's like the butler of Mr. Deeds.
Sneaking up on people.
Yes, he's everywhere. Let me ask you about a sneaky one, TV, because I got a chance. Coach Dvorak introduced him to me because he was on his hip, right, the whole time watching 7-on-7. It was my first time being around Eli Harris.
Yeah.
And he, the lowly 3-star coming out of Grayson, it was like an addition to, I think he's kind of flying under the radar. He's got great tape.
Yes.
And he said something that was interesting, right? He doesn't know me from Adam, and he's very soft-spoken. So Dvorak's down watching Domo with Coach Williams, and he says, DB, this is Eli Harris. I want me to meet whatever. So, we're kind of off to the side, and we're talking, and I said, how does all this, like, are you surprised by this? It's a lot of energy. They sold 8,000 tickets tonight. And TV, he looked dead at me and he goes, man, it's cool. Like to put some pads on, though. These guys just running around doing whatever. You gotta put pads on at some point. I mean, just super like soft-spoken, but direct.
Every year, those are my favorite. Like the linebackers and safeties that talk like that about 7-on-7 are my favorite because they 7-on-7
like Christmas tree. I told Ravi, I go, oh my god! I said I might have just fallen in love. Like it was his delivery, though. He was almost disgusted. Okay. Going on, he said, "Well, you got to put pads." You know what I mean? Like, I was like, "Oh."
How about the hoodie he had on Saturday?
Oh, I know. He reminded me of the Punisher. Right? I was like,
he's got it's a black hoodie and it's like a full zip up, and he's got the hood on, and it's just spikes coming off, like spikes on the hood.
And underneath, it was like it was like it had this design like the Punisher, and I was like, I don't know if he can play, right? I don't know, but I just like the mindset where it's not about flash and dash and running around and being cute. Like at some point, you just have to line up and be able to play ball. And the more guys that they can, like, at least get with that early mindset. Like, he wasn't about the sunglasses and the wardrobe change and all of that other stuff. He just was like, hey, man, at some point we got to put pads on.
Yeah, and you watch his tape. I'm just a football player. Like, he lines up everywhere. He does anything. Like, my comp for him just off the tape watch and the measurables was like, hey, there's some Vincent Shavers here. Getting around him, and DB, you were up closer to him than I was. I just kind of walked in passing a little bit. He's got a little more range than Shavers does.
Yeah. And just because of the I think what they've asked him to do, right? And now we get to see the different, you talk about Tyson Terry 2.0, the Shavers 2.0 is his frame has changed a little bit. He's a little leaner, I think he's cut out. Now he may always still have to have his McDonald's, but I think he's committed to his fitness. There's a board inside TV by the players' locker room, and it has supplement intake, body fat maintenance, and one other category. It's like red, gray, and black, and it's by position group, and you get percentages, and they have a leaderboard. And I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of where the competitiveness doesn't start, but you need it, right? Who's throwing their vitamins away? Who's going to recovery? who's actually caring about where they need to be from like doing the little things when nobody's watching, and they're making a competition out of it, right? It's tight ends, O-line, running backs, quarterbacks, and it's competition. And it's on a great big board for everybody to see, like, who's following directions. Because rules are for people that don't follow directions. When you follow directions and do what you're supposed to, you give yourself a chance to win more games.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's and we can scream, we can shout this till the cows come home and whatever. Like, it won't matter until the fall comes around and
Exactly.
people need to see it with themselves. But like from a culture standpoint, from just an everything like there is better like, and that's not just it's not just the people in the building saying it. It's the people that have been around this program for years that come into the building with the recruits they're representing, or come in with a kid that they've been visiting with for years, or whatever that looks like. These are people outside of the building that have no reason. Like, I've talked to parents with kids committed elsewhere that talk about what Nebraska looks like now compared to what it did, a year ago, 2 years ago, and how different things are from an alignment standpoint. It still needs to click on the field. Like, I'll be the first to say that it still needs to all come together on the field. Like, none of this stuff matters if they don't win games on the field. But I think the important thing to note, it's not a coaching thing. It's the players in the building are owning this at a level that they never have before.
Completely agree.
That is our guy, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Tim, great stuff as always. We appreciate you moving your scheduled spot up for us this week so we could talk to you since we're out on Friday. We appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. I think it'll be a bit till we talk next, because we got 4th of July next weekend. So it'll.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you'll be talking here pretty quick, but for the rest of these yahoos, they might be.
I don't know. I got Tim's number 2. I can text him wherever I want.
You want to hang out with us? You could.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Get a little